supernatural powers of the evil eye claims still another victim. Its malevolent enjoyment of tantalizing torture hangs threateningly over John Saxon, Letitia Roman, and Valentina Corteza.
Oh, she was always against me. She hated me.
Madness and the maddening aura that destroys reason fills their every breath with the smell of death.
Miss Dawson, have you ever seen a murder before?
No, I've never seen anything like that. Never.
Oh, stop playing games, will you, Landini? I don't know what you're trying to do, but I know that you're involved in this. Perhaps Nora has seen the killer. But how do we know that he hasn't seen her?
The evil eye, like relentless tides, reaches out for them, and they defiantly hold ecstasy and horror in their arms and touch lips with terror, while the evil eye watches their every kiss and invades their subconscious.
We're getting right into it today because we want to economize as much time as we can as possible.
We got a big movie.
Yeah.
But big for us, anyway.
Yeah, and we're truncating it into this little old podcast. Welcome back to Saturday Night Movie Sleepovers. That's Jay Blake.
Hello.
That's Dion Baia. Hi, we're here today. We don't have any business to talk about, right? No. Thanks for everybody, new listeners. Hello.
We got new listeners coming in all the time.
Welcome. Salutations. Grab a beanbag chair and sit on down.
We're during the summer of 16.
Yeah, 2016. We got a lot of crazy movies coming out.
We just did our first double feature.
Yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1 and 2, Secret of the Ooze, 2 weeks ago, and that's been doing real fun. That one just knocked us out. We slept for like 12 hours after that. You know, it's like that's the story where like the light comes up and then we slept all day and like mom's up making bread. You gonna get up at any point? Jesus, sounds like a brewery in here.
Dinner,
you know?
2 days late.
Yeah.
Later we wake up,
and then you get all depressed because when you're waking up, the sun's going down, and you're like, oh, I'm not a failure.
And then we got some things coming up.
Yeah, we got some fun things coming up.
Planning
this summer.
maybe even more of a curveball than today's episode for next week, possibly.
Yeah, but this is still.
But it'll be a fun one. If we do
for
it
the 4th.
For the 4th.
For the old July the 4th, the Independence Day.
Yeah,
for our,
an odd choice, but there's logic to it.
Yeah. Hey, I'm a fan of it. You know me. But today we do have an odd choice, I guess. But at the same time, this is someone near and dear to your heart, near and dear to our hearts, and we love this genre. We love the music, and we love everything about it. And this is a stellar example of the lovingness that we have.
Yeah.
So
and that's it. Good night, guys.
Good night, guys. Seeing you soon. Take care. Thanks.
We love it.
Yeah, we're rushing today because we want to get it all in. So we're gonna cut all the BS out of the way right now. I'm cutting it with a knife. Okay, let's just jump right in.
So we're doing probably worldwide Dario Argento's probably biggest movie. I would say here in America, Suspiria is probably better known.
La, la, la.
But
this movie
internationally,
yeah,
Deep Red is probably his biggest film and probably most thought of as being his best work. We're talking 1975, Deep Red, Italian title Profondo Rosso.
Profondo Rosso, or it was released over here as the Hatchet Murders.
The Hatchet Murders, where there's only one murder by Hatchet.
Yeah, but it's the Hatchet Murders.
It's like really like a cleaver murder.
Yeah, it was. But meat cleaver. But they said it got dubbed. The French title is The Shivers of Angst, and the German title is The Color of Death, which is very interesting.
Yeah, the American. Well, like the alternate titles is always kind of like sometimes very interesting, often a weird thing, like Tenebrae or Tenebrae.
Another Dario Argento movie.
That's a Dario Argento movie from the early 80s. The American title is Unsane, which is kind of a great title.
That's a really good title, actually.
It's kind of a great title.
I mean, even The Hatchet Murders is a good title. Unbeknownst to me, I had got this from Netflix thinking it was a different movie, and then I started watching it, and it was like a...
I think I've seen this.
Yeah, it was just a shitty work print, like... that was like transferred to DVD, and I was like, "This looks oddly familiar, doesn't it, honey?" I was like, "I've seen this movie," and then it was cut out.
Phenomenon here was called Creepers.
Yeah, another Argento. These are all Argento titles.
But the best. Well, I mean, there's some great other Italian titles, like I think The Beyond which is a Lucio Fulci movie, was called Seven Doors to Death, I think, or Seven Doors.
That's
to
a great
Death.
movie that I hope we'll cover one day. We already did Fulci's Zombie, which is a big hit for us. But we're talking horror this week. We're talking specifically Italian horror this week. Yeah. And then if we want to zoom in on Italian horror this week, we're talking about Dario Argento.
Yeah.
Who,
and we're talking about a specific faction of Italian horror, which is arguable. We could do a whole episode arguing whether a giallo film is horror or thriller.
There's that word again, giallo, which we haven't said yet. We did a whole sidecast some years ago on what giallo is, and I would be remiss if I didn't bring that up. But at the same time, I think we shouldn't just say, go check that out. We should talk a little bit about what a giallo is.
In a nutshell, basically, giallo means yellow in Italian, and it's a certain type of film that developed out of the popularity of a certain of pulp mystery novels, murder mystery novels that became popular in Italy and I don't know, the 50s, definitely the 60s,
post-war
into the 60s, and one company would release them all, and some of them would be like literally like Italian adaptations of like an Agatha Christie or Poe or something of that nature, and then eventually like original stories started to be written
because of the popularity.
And so it became like a little bit of like this little phenomenon where these pulp novels became very popular, and then
but they were being printed.
But the company that released them all would the covers would be put on this like yellow paper, like the design of it would be a yellow cover with like with the title on a picture, maybe a picture, and so they all had these yellow covers, and so as a kind of a shorthand, they started to call them a giallo or gialli, being plural.
Yeah. Like
the gialli is like the books, these kinds of books in plural. So this became kind of a bit of a thing. They were popular, and then in the 60s, of course, we had kind of like the grandfather, the father of Italian horror movies, Mario Bava.
Yeah.
He kind of dips his toe into the pool of giallo and begins to make the very first giallo films.
Now, at that time, a lot of these, even like Fulci, who we just talked about being a horror director, they were doing like genre pictures, right? They were doing comedies or dramas.
Yeah.
So was Bava like that too? Was
Bava
doing...
did. I feel like Bava, I think he did maybe some of the Sword and Sandals, like Gladiator type movies, but he became pretty well known for horror pretty soon. And he is really like, if you trace it back, I mean, there obviously could have been horror type films before.
But he's the one who really starts that they can take the template of a giallo kind of a movie and put it onto his.
And what's considered the very first giallo movie is a film called The Girl That Knew Too Much.
Yeah.
And it's also called like Evil Eye, I think is an alternate title.
We hope everybody's taking notes out because this is going to be a fact.
Cast. It's a lot of history.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be a lot of film school theory going on.
A lot of stuff here. It's a very serious. It's the back of the bike episode of the Saturday
Bike Shop.
The bike shop.
Very special episode of Saturday Night Movie.
So everybody who is sitting on bean bags, we don't want anybody to make any noise. Just open your your Slimer Kool-Aid things now. Open everything up now and. All right, here we go.
So Mario Bava does a movie called Girl Knows Too Much. Girl Knew Too Much, and obviously a little bit of a nod to Hitchcock.
Yeah. Well, a lot of these I think turn out to be kind of like pseudo love letters to Hitchcock. A lot of these elements of these giallos, in my opinion. And
for the listeners that are out there that are big fans of or listeners and read the blogs and stuff for the F This Movie site, John Saxon's been coming up a lot over there.
Yeah.
And
Saxon dips his toe into one of these movies.
He's in The Girl That Knew Too Much, or AKA The Evil Eye. He's in that. Young, strapping.
Yeah. And that's pre Enter the Dragon, John Saxon.
Yeah, it's mid-60s. I mean, he was in I mean, we can't get into the John Saxon thing.
But he was a character actor in the 50s, like Eastwood and like Burt Reynolds,
he'd been
one of those
around
guys.
for a long time. He was all part of the studio system.
And then in the 60s, I think, kind of starting with Eastwood, everybody ran over. Eastwood did the spaghetti western, and then it was the big thing for American actors to go over on the cheap, go to Spain or overseas, make a shitload of money by doing these genre pictures and coming back, be it westerns or like these horrors. So it was quite popular.
The interesting thing for me about The Girl That Knew Too Much,
the Bava movie, is it's considered the first giallo movie
by most people. I mean, I can't do a blanket statement. It is the first. I mean, I don't know, but most people consider that the first. What's interesting about it is that because it's playing off of a style of book, it's very meta in a way. Like, it's playing off all these conventions that are popular because of the book, but not in cinema. So it's almost as if, like, in 1974, Scream came out. And Scream's playing off all these established conventions.
Yeah.
But they haven't really been established in cinema yet. So it's like...
If Scream were to come out at that time.
Yeah, it would have been like, wait, what?
It confuses audiences, or
I don't know if it did, because maybe the books were popular enough, but because she's a big reader of them, of like Agatha Christie, the main character, and so she's like,
so maybe people go into
it's very meta, and it's kind of fascinating to think that it's the first one, but it's also like the Scream of the genre.
Yeah, maybe it's
at the same time,
since that genre of reading, reading in general was so popular at the time, people could identify a lot with it and see that. And then there's also another. To get too far in the weeds, that weird Italian movement, or should we wait till later about the experience of seeing a giallo film in the cinema?
Well, I don't even know if we need to get too much into that.
I mean, but I think it's fascinating for just to I guess we can touch on that in a little while.
And then going forward, the first one attributed to having like the black gloved killer is Blood and Black Lace, also by Bava. So Bava is kind of establishing this subgenre of thriller for Italy. And then like 69 comes around, and this young guy who was a writer, a critic, wrote for newspapers and magazines, film critic, wrote some couple of westerns, spaghetti westerns, helped establish like the outline, I believe with Michelangelo Antonioni for Once Upon a Time in the West, the Leone movie.
Yeah.
He decides to
this is Dario Argento.
Step into the director's chair, and Dario Argento, he directs the Bird with Crystal Plumage.
Yeah.
Dario, he kind of grew up in the film business. His dad was a producer, Salvatore.
Yeah, producer and screenwriter.
And so he gets the chance to make his first movie. So he decides that he's going to step in and he's going to do the Bird with Crystal Plumage. What's interesting about Argento is that he becomes the guy that revives this subgenre.
Yeah, he's a weird guy, and it's interesting that he goes in there, tips his toes. He's a critic, then segues into screenwriting, and then he's able to get that success because arguably could be even more than Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. That Once Upon a Time in the West is like the penultimate spaghetti western that kind of closes out that genre respectfully. There's of course other things that fall over in the 70s, but that kind of is really good at establishing himself. And I think people even say is a speculation that whole opening scene might be out of his head. Where the Woody Strode and Jack Elam and the third guy are waiting for the Charlie Bronson harmonica man to come, and that whole suspense. And that's very much, you look at the suspense in that scene during the credits. I mean, that's very, like it's almost like a little movie of a preview of what's to come. So with him now coming in and with Bird with the Crystal Plumage,
which is like loosely based on some book. I didn't research that.
We can only do so much.
I was concentrating on the movie that we're doing tonight. But so by the time he does that movie, the giallo thing has become kind of a little of a thing, and then it's starting to fizzle out a little bit. He comes out with Bird with Crystal Plumage.
1970.
He's hailed as the Italian Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Like right off the bat. And that movie is a huge success for him.
Yeah.
His first movie, he fucking hits it out of the park.
And it's like a whodunit thriller that's has for the time big gore factor, so it's like it borders.
Yeah, I mean he ends up
progressively getting into
Deep Red ends up taking that kind of stuff to the next level.
To horror, but this is kind of like him.
It's very visceral. I mean, we'll talk about that.
It is a lot of Hitchcocky with the we love the idea that Hitchcock liked. We love his movies of it, like the Cary Grant or the Jimmy Stewart, where you're or even what's his face, Henry Fonda, where you're the man who's accused of something, you don't know what you've done, and then you're running, and then you have to figure it out yourself.
It becomes a little bit of I think it's a little bit of a trope for giallo or gialli in general, but it's something that Argento definitely latches onto. The idea of the reluctant hero.
Yeah.
And also what's a big thing in gialli and Argento is like the stranger in a strange land.
Yeah.
It's an American in Rome in Bird with Crystal Plumage. We move forward to Deep Red. It's an English jazz piano player who spent some time in America, but now he's in Italy.
Yeah.
So it's like someone who they're not from there, and they witness a murder, and then they become
because of themselves.
Amateur detective.
Yeah, because the local law enforcement can't get any for it.
Which is a very in a lot of ways it's also a very film noir thing.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's very older. It's almost like, Scooby-Doo's doing it at the time, that self-detective. But it even goes back to like Agatha Christie, where you have the young, like a Miss Marple or somebody, or a Hercule Poirot, even though he's a detective, but taking it upon themselves to figure it out.
Yeah, if you look at the film noir movies, like none of them were ever like police detectives. Rarely, it was always like an insurance detective,
or a private,
or maybe a private detective who's hired to do something.
Even some dude who's like the femme fatale was his lover, and then he's trying to search out the truth. So
this is what he's kind of playing on, and the success of Bird with Crystal Plumage spawns like a ton of imitators.
Yeah.
And they all have, Black Belly of the Tarantula, The Woman in a Lizard Skin, which is Fulci, Don't Torture a Duckling. They all have like animals in the title. Yeah. It's trying to get that Italian thing of like almost like the mockbuster, which is like kind of become pseudo popular here with like Asylum Pictures or what they used to do on Sci-Fi Channel. This idea of like, hey, that's what, that was huge. Let's just cookie cutter it out and keep developing them.
Yeah.
Even Argento ends up doing it. And his least favorite movie is Cat o' Nine Tails, which is his second movie, because he feels like it was producers kind of pushed him to do that.
Which is 1971 now, as we start going
Which
forward.
It's actually might be my favorite of that trilogy, of his quote-unquote animal trilogy, which the third movie is Four Flies on Grey Velvet. Those three movies, Bird with Crystal Plumage, Cat o' Nine Tails, and Four Flies on Grey Velvet, have become affectionately referred to by fans as his animal trilogy.
And him too. And
they're all scored by Ennio Morricone.
And I think they're a must for cinema fans. I mean, even for horror fans. You and I saw them first together, and for years they were like indistinguishable to me because we watched them back to back.
Well, Four Flies for the longest time was very difficult to find.
Yeah.
Because they made a company to, like, his dad had put together a company to release it, and then the company went bankrupt, and there was like all kinds of legalities. It has popped up on DVD and Blu-ray.
I don't know. We found it in that really hard to find in that Best Video. Remember, we were like, oh, and we watched it.
Yeah, I think that was like a bootleg though.
Yeah,
that was
like
from some work print or Laserdisc of some sort.
Yeah, but we were able to see it, and it's.
And then I got to see it as part of an Ennio Morricone retrospective. I think at Film Forum a few years ago. They played it.
Wow.
And I went to see it.
I wonder if that was his connection because Morricone had done the score for Once Upon a Time in the West, so he probably was like, hey,
Morricone probably worked, he worked so much and put out so much. I mean, we know the big ones. We know, the Leone scores. And if you're a horror fan, you might know the Argento scores. But he was churning them out. And it's probably very likely that he had scored some of Argento's father's movies just before this.
And that was The Acquaintance.
I would imagine so. I mean, really, there's a lot of nepotism going on.
Yeah.
And luckily, Argento is enough of a visionary and talented enough to kind of push past it. He got opportunities, but he became likely one of the most distinct like auteurs of horror cinema.
Yeah, and his father Claudio, didn't he?
That's his brother.
Oh, okay. Then they helped. They started producing stuff with him too.
Well, that's when I think Salvatore produced like the first 3 movies,
Yeah.
and then Deep Red comes around, and it's produced by both his brother Claudio and his father Salvatore.
Now, these plots that you have here, like we said, are these like whodunits where there's a murder and there's maybe a man in a foreign land, and then they become very convoluted in a sense where there's a lot going on, but then there's not a lot going on. You got to pay attention. If you're casually watching, you could get lost. And I guess this would be a point where I was saying before is interesting that you hipped me in our last podcast we did a couple years ago on this giallo phenomenon about in post World War II in Italy that like how cinema was making a comeback, and everybody in the 50s in America, TV was number one and probably all over the world, except Italy, maybe because it was too expensive. People were still going to the cinema. And then you also were saying that it was different over there as Italians are Italians, that cinema wasn't just going about to watch a movie. It was about the event, the social aspect of it, which I find is freaking hilarious. That this is like, you and I like to go to a movie, everyone shut the hell up. We want to watch the movie, where in Italy at this time, people, it was so known that people are going to chat, walk around, talk to people, casually watch, that this is how the formula in the format of the movies that were being presented were kind of mapped out.
Yeah. Basically, it's like you had like the big cities, which would get like the big movies.
Yeah.
Then they would maybe get the Hollywood movies, or the big budget Italian movies would play in these cinemas. But then as you kind of got away from Rome or
Naples, or
like
Florence,
the bigger cities, as you started to like a web.
Yeah, you go out regionally to like the smaller towns.
They would, like, all these theaters would have theaters. I mean, all these towns would have these theaters. So Italy started to produce less expensive films, the B pictures, for all intents and purposes.
And in that movie, Cinema Paradiso is a great example of this, where growing up in that time in those small cinema in a small town.
And so they would produce these pictures to play in these other theaters. And then it was like, well, since we're producing them anyway, we'll do them in a whole bunch of different languages, and we'll make our money back overseas by dishing them out to like, Times Square, grindhouse theaters, drive-ins, blah, blah, blah.
It's so interesting that there's such a demand that they're just throwing money at it, because they know that these movies will get seen, and they can't. Not all the first-run movies can make these little, second-run theaters. So they're
so
we're
they're
going to just supply and demand.
just they're doing like
churning it out.
It's like, I don't know, like cable television or something. You got like now it's like it's become something completely different. But when cable television came out, you had the networks. Yeah. And then you'd have all these other new cable networks, and they would get reruns of things from the networks, but then they started to produce their own stuff, and it wasn't as popular. And that's kind of what's going on here in Italy at this time, reportedly. I mean,
it's very much like, I guess you look at the 70s here with us. We did the TV movie or the movie of the week, where you'd have a big movie that's in the movies, the cinema, but then you'd have something very similar be made for a TV movie, so they're trying to supply that demand of like, it's not quite called, a Hitchcock
in a way,
Psycho,
it is like a
but
mockbuster.
And that's like you said, very much a silent pictures would do with Sci-Fi Channel. If you had Transformers, they would come out something we call Transmorphers, or the day the Earth stood still be the day the Earth stopped, and which are real movies.
So the Italian film industry is kind of really what's keeping the lights on, is dishing out these lower budget exploitation movies to these smaller theaters. Now, the social aspect of it
it's amazing.
The social aspect of it that you brought up is, like you said, for some reason, TV is huge all over the world, but not Italy.
Yeah.
Maybe
it was too much for
they hadn't developed. Maybe they hadn't developed their own
band system of broadcasting,
and so they weren't churning out a lot of programming in Italian. Whatever the reason, movies are still the big thing. So, like, it would be like you would go to the movies like almost every night. Yeah. You would you'd walk down or drive over to the local theater, and since everybody was there, it was like getting together with everybody in your neighborhood to watch TV.
Like a block party in the cinema. Drinking vino, and
they'd all show up. I'd see Dion sitting over there, and I'd go sit with him for a while. We would shoot the shit. We'd watch some of the movie. We would talk. We'd catch up, and then I'd see somebody else. And so what happens is you get these. The filmmakers and the Italian film industry realize that this is the way people
aren't watching the movie from
beginning. They're talking. The movie is background. So story becomes less important.
And this is critical, I think, for people to appreciate this genre.
Yeah.
That this is why sometimes when all these movies suck, it's like, no, there's a reason because of this.
It's like viewers are not really paying attention anyway. So the story is either really kind of simple or doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
And so what happens is you start to get these set pieces, like very graphic or violent death scenes or boobs or very sexual. And those things, and it's like
elongated death scenes where like a death scene could take like say 30 seconds to a minute with like some crazy jazz fusion score, like dun, 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 it's like it's
and it become in a lot of ways,
and it's very, the pacing. It's
in
like
a lot of
minutes.
ways, in a lot of ways, it's very much of like the YouTube video culture of like just like not really paying attention to things, and like you're watching a TV show and you're texting your friend.
Yeah. Oh, it's like even like porn nowadays. In the old days, porn used to have stories wrapped around sex scenes.
Yeah.
Nowadays, people are like, we don't need the story. So now you just get like scenes. Da 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 da. So it's like, we just need it and let's go.
So but so they would plot out like every 15, 20 minutes or so, you'd have one of these big scenes throughout these movies, whether it be a Western, Sword and Sandal movie, a sex comedy, which was also very big in the 60s in Italy.
Yeah, in England too, sex comedies were huge.
And those things were specifically designed to grab the viewer's attention again. So Dion and I would be shooting the shit. They'd be like, hey,
come stai?
And then all of a sudden, like,
che succede?
the hatchet comes down, some crazy jazz fusion, and then it would bring our attention back to the movie.
Yeah.
And then we would watch those scenes, and
then you'd hear you'd see the cigarette burn. You're like, and then like the reel change, and then it would go to something else, and people are like, Lord.
So it was a very it is kind of a fascinating like social aspect or sociological.
And like I said, I think you see that in that great movie, that Cinema Paradiso movie, where you see that that people go in there and all that kind of stuff, and it's very it capsulizes that whole.
So it's in a lot of ways, it's like the way people watch movies are determining the way movies are made,
which is fascinating to think that like the auteurs back then were not saying like, I don't care, I'm going to stick with my, people like, no, you have to adapt to survive, because people aren't going to go see your movie if it's all like a talkie. They will see. That's the distinction, I think. If they're going to see a first run like Hollywood Golden Age, Humphrey Bogart or whatever, they'll see it because it's Jimmy Cagney, Humphrey Bogart, Edward G. Robinson. But for their own B grindhouse movies, for them to if nobody's in it that they recognize except for some big chested woman who's running around. They're going to need to have these set pieces for them to distract them to look back on the screen, and that's weird how that dictates then the plotting or the.
Yeah, I mean, it really is kind of fascinating, and we could do easily an entire podcast just talking about
which we
that.
did. We did a sidecast some years ago on the giallo. So that's what giallo is in a nutshell.
Yeah,
and then we have guys who are doing thrillers that are. You can debate if they're horrors purely, but they're more thriller with horrific elements, like the death scenes and stuff. But then,
like in a lot, I think in Italy, like these movies, even the majority,
they're just gory. They're very gory Hitchcock movies.
Even the majority of Argento's movies are probably not considered horror movies. Yeah. I don't think he doesn't get labeled as a horror director in Italy until Suspiria, Inferno, Phenomena, where you get this aspect of the supernatural, the paranormal. Yeah, I think
late 70s.
In Italy, I think that's more what they think of as horror. These other things are strictly giallo, which are murder mystery thrillers, basically.
And then for people who are American fans, what's interesting is in the late 70s and the 80s, you have big directors here like Brian De Palma. Yeah, he's doing giallos. His first 4 movies are like love letters to either Hitchcock or to these giallo subculture.
It is fascinating because you look at undoubtedly some of these movies, aspects of these movies, maybe the entire movies, they are kind of birthed from Hitchcock, basically. So Hitchcock kind of influences this genre. I mean, one could certainly argue, like you said, Argento is considered the Italian Hitchcock. You could really sit down. There's a lot of arguments to be made that like they're actually working on two totally different planes of things they're interested in dramatically or thematically, blah, blah, blah. But this is the moniker he gets. So certainly these movies are being influenced by Hitchcock. And then what's interesting is these movies influence Hitchcock. Frenzy is a giallo.
Wow.
It's a like a trench coated dark black trench.
In what Frenzy's like mid-70s, right?
Is it his last movie?
No, Family Plot with Bruce Dern's his last movie, and that's like 79, and he dies around that time.
And I did an interview with Alan Jones on the Podwits where he basically wrote the book on Argento. He wrote a book called
that gentleman who we could put a link into this cast about it. He is a British. What is he, like a critic?
He's an
aficionado.
He was very much part of the British division of the magazine Cinema Fantastique.
Yeah,
which we talked about somewhat recently on a
casts ago.
And so he would go on set, and so he was on like every Argento set. I think starting with Tenebrae in the early '80s, and he would really go on there and talk to people and report from that. But so he has become very close to Argento over the years, wrote a book called Profondo Argento, and it has been re-released with a different title and some updated chapters. But talking to him, I said, do you think that Frenzy is influenced by Argento? And he was like, totally. He's like, think about it. A guy that loves movies, meaning Hitchcock, he's not just a filmmaker. Well, he's a guy that genuinely loves cinema.
We talked about in our Smoking the Bandit cast that his daughters admitted that what do you call that, a secret love or whatever, is he loves Smoking and the Bandit. So you're right, he's sitting down.
It wasn't
watching these movies.
It wasn't like Bird with Coastal Plumage was big just in Italy. I mean, it was big all throughout Europe. It played in America. I mean, so being Hitchcock, a guy who eats, shits, breathes fucking cinema. If imagine if it was you, if it was like, if I was like Dion, there's this guy that's called the Italian Dion Baia. And would you not be curious?
Yeah, of course. You're going to seek out, and especially if it's in your wheelhouse. If he's making romantic comedies, I'll get around to it. But if
this guy making thrillers, they're calling him the Italian Hitchcock. Of course, Hitchcock went and saw fucking his movies. Yeah. And then, and then Frenzy comes out. Yeah. And it is like by the book Italian giallo, but made in England. Yeah. Now I take umbrage with Brian De Palma because Brian De Palma
and Frenzy's the one with there's that huge scene where they're trying they're killed. Remember, there's the scene in the apartment where they're killing the guy and he won't die and they're using like the oven. Isn't that Frenzy? I feel like it's been
so long. I mean, I know the killer strangles people.
Yeah. But you have
it's very provocative for
Hitchcock.
I mean, it's like you see how things have become more lenient towards things like violence, and had Hitchcock been able to show more in his earlier movies, how much more provocative his movies would have been.
Yeah, and so my point of bringing that up, you're right, that Frenzy, because I do remember there's scenes in Frenzy where it's like it takes a while for someone to die. It's like a lot of that stuff's drawn out like you see in these movies. So
it's textbook giallo.
So De Palma.
So De Palma,
umbrage.
He, and I've come to really like some of De Palma's films a lot. There was a long time where I just didn't. I just didn't connect with him as a viewer. Like his stuff just didn't speak to me. But I don't know if it was a maturity or.
Except for Carlito's Way.
I loved Carlito's Way, but I was never like as big a fan of The Untouchables as you were. Yeah. I never was really
Wise Guys
that much into Scarface.
Yeah. Scarface I've come around to because I've said in another podcast, which I won't get into, but I didn't like it because I felt like the rap culture appropriated it and then they were glorifying it for the wrong reasons, and then they weren't doing any homework and realizing it was a remake at the very least. So.
And at the time, I don't know why if it was just a tainted immaturity or whatever.
You stayed away from all.
Stubbornness. I didn't like Carrie. But I've come to really like Carrie now, and I think Sisters is really interesting. But in the recent years, as I come around to these movies, I check out Blowout, and
Dress to Kill,
Body
Double,
and
is there another one?
Obsession, maybe. And so, but like, because Dress to Kill, I see Dress to Kill, and I was like, this has got Argento written all over.
Yeah, his semen's all over.
I think everybody thinks of him as like. De Palma continually paying homage to Hitchcock, but it reeks of Italian.
Yeah, I mean,
cinema.
We don't want to give it away, but just how.
And my umbrage with him is that he really downplays it. Says, "Oh, I never. I think I saw I think I saw one Argento movie. Like, Argento's not.
Oh, he's full of shit.
He just like really kind of downplays. And to be honest, there is a chance, to give him, maybe a little bit of benefit of the doubt. Maybe he's taking it from Frenzy.
There's definitely heavily, like, there's a lot of those movies in the early 80s until maybe you get to, like, post Scarface and post Wise Guys before he does Untouchables, where it's very much like he's fascinated with Hitchcock and he's fascinated with this.
But then even Blowout you can't deny that it has to be influenced by Antonioni's Blow Up.
Yeah.
De Palma's Blowout. I mean,
with John Travolta,
which is in essence a giallo. It's a little bit more abstract, maybe a little more experimental, but it's
July the 4th movie as well.
It's also July the 4th movie.
Yeah. And we said,
but anyway, so
Philly, right? Rocky Philly connection.
Yeah. So
alternate universes, they're playing on the same time. We brought that up in the Rocky cast.
That's true.
That at the end of the Rocky cast,
there's serial killer running around
at the
Philadelphia while everybody's getting ready for the big fight,
for the big Rocky fight. Go Rocky. And he's it's very Maniac. Like Joe Spinell's down there too.
So I'm just saying. Anyway.
Yeah. So we get back to we took a left turn, but we're getting back to the Italians.
So just the influence of it is permeating cinema, especially in the 70s.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting about Argento, as now we're going to kind of leap into the movie itself,
Profondo Rosso,
is Bava kind of creates this genre as a in cinema. By 69, 70, it's kind of had its run. Argento comes with it. Hits it out of the park with Bird with Crystal Plumage, becomes fucking huge.
Yeah.
Like we said, now all these imitators, and some of them are very good, some of them are not so good, but all these giallo movies start getting made. Much of them have an animal in the title based on this template that Argento had kind of set up. And then by 73, 74, they're starting to die down again.
Of course.
They've kind of had the run. Yeah. 72, 73.
When you saturate the market, people are like, I don't want to drink my wine and watch animals get killed.
And then 75.
There's no animals getting killed.
75, Deep Red comes out. And everybody's like, holy fuck.
Here we go again.
and so, like,
spikes back
he
up.
is the savior of the giallo film. Yeah. He's the one that keeps it going. Every time it's down and out, Argento comes back in, knocks one out of the park, and all of a sudden, it's a big thing again.
Yeah.
Now, for Argento himself, he had those 3 hits with the Annibal trilogy. He decides, I don't want to get typecast as pigeonholed as a thriller director.
Yeah.
So he comes out with like a
couple TV.
He comes out with a film called 5 Days in Milan, which is like a period drama movie or something, or like a comedy. Full disclosure, I've actually never seen it. It's hard to get a good copy of it. And it doesn't do well.
Yeah,
it kind of bombs.
And he does another movie around that time too, A Man Called Amen, which is from 70. Both are 73. So it's like he's doing these.
Not as a feature movie anyway.
It might have been a TV movie.
So he does 5 Days in Milan. It doesn't do very well.
Yeah, he does 2 Italian dramas. 5 Days in Milan, and then the other one.
And then, but on TV, he does a TV show where he's like the Hitchcock. He hosts this TV show, which is like a very giallo thriller-based TV show called Door into Darkness, which is available on DVD. You can actually find it. And I think he directed 1 or 2 episodes, but other great Italian thriller horror directors that are notable have also did episodes of it. And he presents it. He becomes a personality.
How long does it run for?
I think it's only like 4 or 5 episodes.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, I don't know what the...
And that's in 70, around this time, 73, 74.
Yeah, it's just before...
Four Flies and Grey Velvet.
Yeah.
And Profondo Rosso, when he does these 2 TV movies.
So he kind of bombs at the box office. He's kind of down on that in the theater. But on television, he produces... and maybe it's like England where they do like a series is like 6 episodes or whatever.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know what the cycle is in Italy in terms of how long a series runs, but he does it, and he introduces all that. So he's in people's houses. He becomes famous as a director. He
as a personality,
which is another aspect of like taking that from Hitchcock. Hitchcock Presents. It becomes like he's the face of his movie,
like Orson Welles would do, or like a Howard Hughes, or.
And the TV show does pretty well for television. Like we established, like TV. Maybe by the 70s, TV starts to pick up a little bit more. But, we were talking more like 50s, 60s, the way people watched movies in the theater and not watch television. By the 70s, TV's probably,
they're finally getting
huge pop. It's now been 20 years or whatever. So it starts to pick up. The TV show does very well. So he says, maybe I need to return to the thriller,
to the cinema,
to the giallo, So he decides that he's going to.
That would have been great if you were able to say that in Italian. I need to return to the giallo.
So he decides that he's going to make another giallo film. Like we said, giallo's kind of down and out. He says, "Screw it, I'm going to do another one," and that's when he does Deep Red.
Yeah.
So now this is probably 74. He's making it. It comes out in 75. He takes an idea. The whole thing comes from this idea. And it's a very important aspect for Argento because up until his movies, the Animal Trilogy, another aspect of Argento that's like a recurring thing for him is science, and it's like a pseudoscience, like a fictional science. I mean, in maybe not so much in Bird with Crystal Plumage. I mean, there's a lot of like they hear something on the back of a tape. There's like a replaying things. So there's like a forensic almost type science. But with Cat o' Nine Tails, it's about like DNA strands. And if you have a certain, geome or something like that, you become more aggressive. And he's playing with this idea of like fictional science. And then Four Flies on Grey Velvet is like the last image you see before you die is imprinted on like the back of your cornea or whatever. And if you can extract that, you can see who the killer was. Yeah.
Like it's another idea that The Hammer does is a great movie to Terror Train. Is it Terror Train? That's the point with Peter Cushing, Kelly Savalas of all people, and Christopher Lee were that's the idea on the image of the retina. Look, it's a pterodactyl.
So Argento has this thing with science. Now, Deep Red comes around, and this is very important because it's what eventually will lead to Suspiria and him becoming a horror director, as he introduces the idea of the paranormal.
Yeah. And this is him segueing from the whodunits, the giallos.
It comes from a true story. He knows this medium, like a psychic medium, who tells him a story that they were doing a seance somewhere, and they got this vibe that somebody inside the room with them was evil.
Wow. How fucking freaky is that?
And so he takes this idea, and he's been chewing on it for a while. Because even when they were doing Four Flies on Grey Velvet, Luigi Cozzi, who had become a director, he worked on Four Flies on Grey Velvet. He tells Luigi Cozzi about this idea. He's like, I got this idea,
Luigi.
This idea of that there's this medium and there's someone that's evil inside the room. And then that's kind of like the springboard. So he's chewing on this idea for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And so finally, the idea to come to Profondo Rosso comes around. And so there's this aspect where for all intents and purposes, really the first scene, even though there's a little bit of jam session going on, jazz jam session. The first scene is we're in like this psychology seminar.
Yeah.
And they're talking to and it's the seminar on parapsychology. And there's a medium who
in front of this whole audience up on stage.
Yeah. The proscenium of the theater is a very big thing in Argento's movies. Opera comes, in the 80s. Theater is something that he... I think there's parts, things take place in the theater a lot in his movies. Because I think he grew up with the theater and whatnot. So they're doing this, I guess, demonstrating these psychic powers that she has.
Because some people are disbelievers, of course. So she starts saying there's a gentleman in the third row. He's holding his keys. He's 4 keys. The one key is the longest. He's like, it is me. I have these.
Yeah. So it's like little demonstrations, and then all of a sudden she's hit with this wave of evil, kind of, and then it's very. I don't know. It's engaging. I was trying to think of a movie that there's a scene like it, but. that's kind of the spring.
Well, it's almost like later on. It's like Stephen King's Christopher Walken movie Dead Zone, where he touches people. That kind of where it's
the ice.
Yeah,
it's gonna break.
You're gonna hurt yourself. You're gonna die. You gotta get out of here now, today, tomorrow, maybe. You ever see the Saturday Night Live skit that the grass where he's touching people? Wow. You track mud all over the house. But and then it's to a certain extent too. Again, Stephen King, The Shining, this Catman Crothers psychic.
It's true.
You know what I mean? Like with the kid, they're getting that power.
So the idea is that, like, by psychic link, this medium becomes the witness, kind of a crime. Like that's like so now. You know, the killer is in the audience for some reason. You know, we'll talk about.
Oh yeah, so randomly seeing the seminar, then the killer gets up and leaves.
Yeah,
but she kind of says what she's seeing, and then kind of collapses with the two people. Like, oh my God, she needs help next to her, like her two assistants.
So in a way, it's like now the killer, you know,
it's very first person too.
Yeah,
you know,
now the killer kind of feels obligated that now has to kill this person. Like in a way, like I said, it's almost like they're the witness to a crime.
Yeah.
And so you have to you know cut all the loose ends.
And we also
I mean?
have I think the movie actually opens when you fade up on la la. It's like a Christmas morning. We didn't know this is a Christmas movie.
Yeah, I was gonna text you.
You know, this is a Christmas movie.
Before we ended up watching it, I was thinking like maybe we should wait for this for Christmas
because it has a Christmas tree in it. So it opens up. It must be Christmas time or whatever like that, and then you see. Against the wall silhouette of a murder, someone getting stabbed to death, and then you see it, and can see the floor in the shot, and then all of a sudden this big bloody butcher knife drops to the floor, and then walks in. Looks like a child's feet with like the long stockings, and then that's the movie. Then it kind of fades to your jam session.
Yeah, which is like
music is huge in these movies.
Yeah, and for people that are gonna try to haven't seen it, want to see it. We're talking about the Italian cut of the movie, which is 126 minutes.
Yeah, it's 2 hours and 6 minutes. They for some reason when they went to the American version, which I don't know if it was Bill the Hatchet Murders, for years they didn't know, but it was confirmed that it was Argento who supervised. He took out 26 minutes. Yeah, he took out some
of the gore and a lot of like the comedy.
Yeah, and then there's two scenes of kind of animal violence, one of which is debatable. One scene that is pretty horrific on an animal. They took all that out, and that didn't get restored till like 2008 or 9. Yeah, so if you want to go watch this now, if you get this off of Netflix, if you get the Hatchet Murders, you're going to get the American cut, which is just over what is it, like an hour, hour and 40 minutes or something. Yeah, but if you go buy this DVD or you go rent it on Netflix, you're going to get the 2 hours or at least the option. To watch it. And then this is another thing too with these original scenes that are put back in, much like they do this with, if people know the extended cut of Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, they never translated it in English. Yeah. So a lot of these...
There was no need to spend the time and the money to dub lines in English that were never going to be seen in English.
Yeah, so a lot of these movies, when they have these scenes put back in, all of a sudden there's Italian subtitles, even if you're watching it with dubbed in English. If you're watching the original Italian, you don't have to worry about it. Yeah. So that's where you see this happen. So we're working off. We watched the Italian cut,
and in the Italian version, we kind of open on this little like jazz jam session happening, and that's where we're introduced to our main character, Marcus. Played by David Hemmings, who we brought up Blow Up, the Antonioni movie, just recently in relation to Blowout, and we brought up Antonioni in relation to Once Upon a Time in the West. He did a movie that's, like I said, kind of a giallo, but it stars David Hemmings.
Yeah, Hemmings looking very much like a young David Spader in this movie. Rocking the mullet. Not mullet, but the hair on top of the hair in the back.
James
Spader? David Spader. No, David Spader. James Spader.
He looks a lot like David Spader.
Yeah, David Spader. He looks like a Joe Dirt a lot. No, I'm kidding. I always get the Spades mixed up. James Spader.
And he is a British jazz piano player, but he's teaching at like the Roman Conservatory.
Yeah, it takes place in Rome, but they filmed it in Turin. And he filmed it in Turin because he said, for a weird reason, that he said that it's very magical and haunting, as well as at the time in all of Europe it had the most concentration of Satanists, practicing Satanists in Turin. So they filmed it in Turin.
Yeah, the majority, like the vast majority of it, is filmed in Turin, but
set in Rome.
There are others. There are some. A little bit of it is shot in Rome, but it's for the most part set in Rome. And so it's him jamming. And he, he stops the session. He gives some notes or whatever. So that's really how the movie starts. So we're introduced to the character right away. Then we go to the
convention.
The exposition
with the psychiatrist.
Exhibition.
Oh, I'm sorry, with the psychic, and she has her little thing, and then she kind of passes out, and then it's like then it cuts back to him leaving and going out for the night. And then it's interesting that the Edward Hopper aspect.
Yeah.
Because I'm a huge Hopper fan, and I think this Edward Hopper, the painter, and a lot of people might know Edward Hopper because of the iconic diner. It's called Nighthawks, and it's very famous because now you have like,
not to be mistaken with the awesome
Stallone movie Nighthawks,
which we'll get to at some point.
Or the Tom Waits album Nighthawks at the Diner. There is now you see they have like James Dean and Marilyn Monroe and Humphrey Bogart hanging out on this. So, but I guess for some reason Argento really liked that painting, Nighthawks, and then he ended up recreating. So I'm like, how much of that budget went to like in the middle of this big like square?
Yeah, like Roman square.
He has this really like Art Deco.
He basically builds that like bar, diner bar.
It's a diner, and it's it's night. That's what they call people like Nighthawks, people who are up late hanging out at diners, like taxi cab drivers. People of the night. That's hence the name Nighthawks. So his looks exactly like it, but his looks a little more like a bar where people are in there, like a cafe. It's called a cafe.
In the movie, it's called like Blue Bar, or Blue Cafe, or something like that. And
so they're not eating like eggs and bacon, like because they don't have diners in Europe or England or Italy. Diners are an American thing. So over there, it becomes a cafe. So they're in this cafe, and it's like he meets his friend Carlo. And Carlos had a little drink,
Carlos got a little bit of a drinking problem,
which we learn in the movie. And he's like, "Oh, Carl, I haven't seen you in a while." They chat for a minute. And they're chatting about stuff in life. And Carlo's down on his luck, and he's drinking.
But the Blue Bar is an interesting thing because it wasn't there. They built it for the movie as a set piece, and while filming, they would have to turn people away because people were like, "Hey,
look at this cafe,
look at this new bar or whatever." So people would constantly be trying to get into it, and they'd be like, "No, this is a film set." And then when they finally went to tear it down, like the town or whatever wanted them to keep
Turin
wanted them to keep it there. But it was just
that'd be beautiful if they were assembled somewhere in some sort of like giallo or Italian cinema museum. You know what I mean? That would be something to be like in our version of the American Institute of Film and History. And anybody who doesn't know Edward Hopper, go check him out. Great artist in the 20th century. Was based in New York and New England and Connecticut. So there's a lot of we said these nice cityscapes, and also he had a lot of coastline stuff of New England. Gorgeous painter.
Now, what's interesting about Deep Red is because we talk about like story not being that important in a lot of these movies. Deep Red, like for no other reason, is probably significant because it's like his most like intricate plot line.
Yeah.
And maybe the one that like actually makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Throughout the
because
whole
a
thing.
lot of as he starts going on, they kind of like we said, the plot gets somewhat convoluted, and then you have a lot of the first person of the killer. He loves having killers dressed in like black trench coats with black leather gloves, and then he, for the POV, plays the part. Yeah, Argento himself.
He's almost always the gloved hand, or is always his hand.
Did you see in
Argento,
the frame?
For those of you that haven't ever checked out Argento, I mean, I feel like there needs to be a disclaimer. And when I used to talk about Argento in the horror film class that I taught for a few semesters, and when I talk about Argento with people, my friends of mine that haven't seen it, I always feel like I have to disclaimer. Like, there's like typically never really like an in between with people for Argento. It's usually like they either get it, they watch it, it connects with them on some level, they like Argento, or they watch it, it doesn't connect with them, and they don't like it. There's very little like in between viewers. The way I always try to express how I feel like in my opinion, how an Argento movie really needs to be watched is you just need to like abandon like any kind of like cynicism about cinema, about being sticklers about plot line. You need to just like check everything, check all your baggage at the door, and just experience it. Just let it like wash over you, because in a lot of ways it's a very visceral experience. The way he shoots his movies is always interesting, always very specific to him, always very stylized. The music that he chooses, which we will get into for sure about this movie, is always very specific, and you just, it's a visceral experience. You just need to let it wash over you, and you can't get caught up in the details of like, this doesn't make sense, or like, that's stupid.
Yeah.
You just have to let it, because again, with like
the
way Italian cinema is, everything's always dubbed, so you have to, that's part of it. Like, you can't get caught up in like that often it's poor dubbing. You just have to let it happen, and then when it's done, then you either you like it or you don't like it. I mean, and for me, it's like when I first experienced it, it just like it clicked for me.
What was your first picture? Do you remember for Argento? Because I don't either.
My route was, I would imagine that you experienced it through me. I would. I would assume.
Well, did we see it at the same time?
No, it was we had a roommate. Chris, who he and I had become very close friends, and he's the one that kind of introduced it to me. We rented the Two Evil Eyes, which is an American movie that it's like an anthology where he and George Romero and Dario Argento each do kind of an adaptation of an Edgar Allan Poe story.
Yeah, with Tom Savini doing all the special effects.
And I think that's
1990 circa, right?
That's probably that's probably the first Argento thing I saw. And even though his version of The Black Cat is unlike any other Argento movie,
starring Harvey Keitel,
starring the great Harvey Keitel in like the weirdest performance he's probably ever given.
Yeah.
It just was an eye-opener to me. Like, you could never watch that movie and be like,
see a Poe again.
It's, and be like, that's an Argento movie. I mean, it is, because he's got a style. He is an auteur. But it's unlike any other movie he's ever done in terms of, it's not a giallo, blah, blah, blah. It's...
You think it's because he shot it over here and did it like, kind of Americanized?
Well, I just don't think that story...
lends itself to his kind of style.
I mean, certainly it is when you watch it, it's like, it's Argento, but it's not like the typical Argento movie. But I saw it, and it just, I would imagine a lot of people probably don't care for it, but it just connected with me on some
I don't remember Romero's story being very good either.
Romero's movie is not. Let's just say it's forgettable.
Yeah.
I remember not loving it. It's certainly very forgettable, which is a shame because it's a Poe story that I can't really think of the title of it that I like a lot. But Argento
which one is it? The one where he's
it's the one where they hypnotize the guy.
Oh, it's the
as
case
he's dying.
The case of Voldemort or Yeah, it takes place in Harlem where they hypnotize the gentleman before he dies to see if he can...
an experiment.
To see if they can keep him talking to him even though he passes away. And there's a great... They did that... Corman did a great one of that with Vincent Price as the person who's dying. And the original story, it's up in Harlem, like at some rich guy's house.
And it stars Adrienne Barbeau, and Tom Atkins is in it. I mean, they try to make it like a bit of a noir-y type thing. I mean, Romero takes a lot of liberties with the story, but that's the Black Cat's the first thing I saw of Argento, and it is fucking kooky. I mean, it is off the wall, and it really was like, this guy is nuts.
Yeah.
And then I remember Chris and I were walking through
the Facts in the Strange Case of M. Valdemar is the story we're referencing. Great freaking story if you haven't never read it. And Two Evil Eyes, 1990 is the adaptation we're talking about, and the one I just referenced was Tales of Terror from 62.
Originally they wanted to more people. Like Carpenter was going to do one. Like they were going to have it was going to be like the original Masters of Horror.
Oh, okay.
But it ended up just being Romero and Argento. Around that time, walking through a Coconuts music store.
Ooh, that's a flash in the past.
Yes, remember those.
That means there's not any more, huh? I haven't seen it anymore.
I don't think they exist anymore.
It's like Strawberries.
I'm looking at the budget bin, like the $2 the $2 videos, VHS tapes, and I pull out this movie called Terror at the Opera.
Yeah.
And I'm with Chris, and Chris looks at it. He's like, "Oh, that's Dario Argento." He's like, that you'll like that. He's like, it's the guy that did Black Cat. You'll like his shit.
Yeah.
It turned out it was like the American cut of Opera.
And this is our freshman year, isn't it?
So this is like 97.
Yeah, 97, 98.
Maybe 98.
And you were just jonesing because I didn't hip you to, but we both revisited because of me The Thing.
Yeah.
And you were getting into Carpenter, and this is when you were getting into Fulci and your Bruce Campbell-isms.
Yeah.
So this is when you were getting
Well,
into...
I was already really into Carpenter, but when you watched The Thing, we talk about it in the Thing podcast.
Yeah. I was like, yo, brother, have you seen it?
And I was like, you know what? I haven't seen it in a long time. And I was very into Mouth of Madness
Yeah.
and Prince of Darkness. So I was kind of on a
His
Carpenter
recent
thing.
stuff, yeah.
And then you kind of did hit me onto like revisiting that because I hadn't seen it in a long time.
Yeah.
And then it became like a full-fledged
So
obsession.
you're basically like, you have your...
I'm a sponge for like,
Yeah.
at that point.
You have your radar on.
I'm just
radar
like
on.
everything that's, especially if it's kind of like horror related for
Yeah.
some reason at that time, which
Evil Dead, all that kind of stuff.
there's a
was
whole
like
bunch of stuff going on in that time that makes me receptive to that.
So,
that's how I invented. That's how I got into Argento.
And then you got me because we'd go home to my house in Connecticut. You'd stay over for a weekend doing bona fide sleepovers.
Yeah.
And as we referenced before, up in Connecticut and Hamden, we had that best video that had very hard to find obscure videos.
And we also started going to horror conventions at the time.
Yeah,
and I would pick up bootleg videos. And
we went to a couple Fangora conventions in the city at the New Yorker Hotel. So when we went to the Best Video, who really prided themselves on having out of print or not available titles, we found their Four Flies in Gray Velvet, and we found The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, and I think we did a double feature of those. We came home, we watched. That's how I saw my dad's big old 4x3, 60-inch television, with the deep back. We watched
projection television.
We watched Four Flies in Gray Velvet, and we watched Bird with the Crystal Plumage, and those movies are just like blew my mind because like what the hell's going on? And then for years they were just one movie to me. They were in this.
And then I remember the following year going to a horror convention and buying like a bootleg of Stendhal Syndrome.
Which I watched with you.
Which was from a Laserdisc.
Yeah.
Like a Japanese Laserdisc bootleg. And then we watched that together.
And we watched Trauma together with...
Trauma, yeah. That was actually given to me as a gift by Chris.
And those movies we're talking about are in the 90s. Trauma's like the next one he did after, I think, Two Evil Eyes, maybe.
Yeah, it was part of like his American
And then
deal.
like 96.
Totally
is
underrated
Stendhal.
in my personal opinion.
Trauma.
Yeah, I like that movie a lot.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's how we kind of got into it.
In Opera, which you just said that in the...
It's late 80s.
Yeah, late 80s. Bootleg bin is from the late 80s. So that's how you got into Argento. So getting back to Deep Red, we have the.
So we're talking about the story and how you need to experience it. So, but this movie stands apart as being like one of his most like intricate storylines, and they give a lot of credit to Bernardino Zapponi.
Yeah, Bernardino
Zapponi.
Yeah, Bernardino Zappoli. He was the co-writer on this.
He co-wrote it, and he was best known for being a collaborator with Fellini.
And he said at the time...
But he also wrote a book, and that's why Argento
knew him.
Well, that's why he wanted to write with him, because he had written a book called Fantasma a Roma, which is like the ghost of Rome, in Rome, or something like that.
And Zappolini talks about how they came together. They wanted to do a movie, and that, like you said, Argento had this really interesting opening, the paranormal medium, and then they started to devise ways of killing people. But they said people have abstract. No one really knows. What it feels like to be shot by a gun or to be stabbed. So they were kind of thinking, why don't we come up with deaths that people kind of have a reference to, which is kind of horrifying.
Yeah, well, exactly. Like the idea of being shot, most people...
Yeah, unless you were in the war or something, or,
can only imagine what that feels like. But everybody knows what, like, blunt force trauma feels like.
Yeah, if you hit yourself...
Or to be burned.
Yeah, you scold yourself while cooking on some boiling water, or you're walking through your apartment, you stub your toe, or you hit the side of your coffee table. You know how that feels. So they're like, why don't we take that and we'll turn those into freaking deaths?
Yeah.
In this movie, or getting cut. So they kind of work their death. And there's not a lot of death. There's only, 4 deaths in this movie. It's all very much investigation, but the deaths are horrific. I was, when you first see it, you kind of think like, oh, maybe, it's going to be like a shit show with like Scream, where like there's a death every 10 to 15 minutes. But no, this is very well choreographed.
So they work. I mean, they work kind of, I think, separately for the most part, and then they'd come in and kind of work together. Like they'd both bring ideas to it. But Zapponi is really, they get, Argento is the kind of director that likes to take full credit for things. And he is an auteur, and those movies would not be those movies without his guidance. So in some way, it's warranted, but he also does not like his girlfriend, who he meets on this movie, Dario Argento, becomes one of the lead.
And she's the reporter, right, in this movie?
She plays the reporter.
Yeah.
He meets her before this movie, but she gets cast in this movie. They become an item. She's the one that actually comes up with the story for Suspiria. Based on stories. She had a grandmother who was, in her words, a white witch, and how all the black witches hated her grandmother, but her grandmother was a very powerful white witch. And so she would hear these stories about witchcraft and stuff, and so she relayed this to Argento. So she's very much the impetus. Without Dario Argento, Suspiria would not exist.
Yeah.
And he does not give her any credit.
Really, Dario Argento doesn't.
He leaves her off the screenplay credit, and so Argento is a guy that he takes credit. To him, they're his.
And
films.
Is that Asia's mother?
That's Asia's mother.
I'm sorry, Asia.
Argento had a previous marriage and had a daughter named Fiore, and then he never marries Dario Argento, but they're together for about 10 years. And out of that,
giving her no credit. You sit in the back of the room,
and she's in his movies after they break up, but their daughter is Asia Argento, who's
turns into actress.
Who's an actress and a pretty big star in Italy.
Yeah. Well, she was big here. She's in the Triple X movies. She's in Trauma. She's raped, and don't you see her breasts and all kinds of weird stuff he does to his daughter in Trauma.
Yeah, Trauma. She's in Trauma. She's in the Stenhouse. I mean, she becomes his girl. Heroine.
Yeah.
In the movies, she becomes what David Hemmings is in this movie, the protagonist.
Yeah. So Hemmings, he leaves his jam session. We wrap up with the paranormal meeting that she said she collapsed seeing some sort of thing. He meets his friend Carlo in the square by the Ed Hopper Nighthawk's Diner, which is now a cafe. They're chatting for a bit. Hemmings says his goodbyes to
Carlo. They shoot the shit for a few minutes.
Yeah.
As Carlo walks out and leaves.
Meanwhile, we're intercut with that happening.
Yeah. Before that even happens.
It's intercut with the psychic getting back to her apartment. She's fucking around in her apartment. Her apartment's very nice. It has a lot of paintings on the wall. It's very much, very modern.
Weird,
very weird
type.
Yeah, very once maybe Night Gallery was off television. She bought all of...
she brought up the prop.
Yeah,
pictures.
she brought all the Rod Serling Night Gallery pictures, and she has them on her wall. And then she has a nice big window that overlooks this square that they're down in. So she ends up getting murdered.
Yeah.
And it's a very long murder.
She opens the door, and this gloved hand brings down this meat cleaver into her chest.
And then and she's getting hacked to death by this big meat cleaver, and then it's intercut with our man Hemmings and Carl, you good? Yeah, I'm good too. I'm drunk. You drunk? Okay. And then prolonged death scene. And the last part is he says his goodbyes to Carlo Hemmings, and he turns and looks up and he sees this woman in a window.
They hear a scream and they don't really think.
Oh yeah,
there's a weird joke where he's like, maybe there's a woman getting raped.
Yeah, because we're in Italy.
And he's like, what is that? There was a scream in the distance.
Yeah,
and Carlo's like, maybe she's getting raped. Who cares?
Yeah. It's like, okay, I'm from England.
We care about things like that.
Aspetta. Allora, let's change the subject. You like Ed Hopper? No? Okay, let's change the subject again. You like a drinking, don't you? So they're talking they hear the scream during the conversation. They make nothing of it. And then they say their goodbyes. He looks up at the window. He sees a woman in this window. And then classic Argento, woman gets freaking impaled through the window.
Yeah, her head breaks through the window, and then her throat is impaled.
She
on
impales
the broken glass.
Yeah, shards. On the shards, and then she's there, and then the guy's like, ah! And then Hemmings runs up into the apartment, kicks. I guess the door's open, gets in there, and then he's doing the job of taking the head off. But as he runs in, he's looking around. He checks out all the paintings and stuff like that, and then makes it to the window. She's clearly dead. He takes her off, and at this point you say there's a plot here where the cops are going to come think he did it.
Yeah.
I didn't do it. And then he's going to run.
Yeah, like
he'll punch
north by northwest. Style.
Yeah, he'll punch one of the officers in the face for some odd reason, a constable, and then he'll run out, and then it's like I have to clear my name.
Yeah.
But
it's
no,
not that.
Not that at all. He looks down. He sees Carlos still. He looks through the window. He sees his friend's Carlos still down there, and then he sees this trench-coated person,
walking away.
Yeah, not running, walking away out of the scene. Dark trench coat, nice big old Stetson hat with a big old brow, so you can't see anything. Leaving the area, and then he's like, Carlos. Oh no! And so cops are come, and then we have these wacky cops. Very much, I love how all the sergeants in these movies are very much larger than life, and that goes back to like we even talk about the Charlie Chan movies or whatever. You always have to have the local sergeant, like I'm not gonna take anything from anybody, spitting coffee out when he gets. This is the cold coffee with the hot coffee.
So yeah, I mean, now it's a police scene. Now it's a murder scene, and he's being questioned by the police chief. And the other notable thing about Deep Red, which I guess gets cut out a lot of the in the American version, is that there is a lot of comedy.
Yeah, there's a lot of because this is when our reporter shows up.
The police detective is definitely like a little bit of comic relief, and he's like, "What are you doing? You from here? What are you doing here? If you're from America?" He's like, "Well, I spent some time in America." He's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Well, I'm a piano player." And he's like, "There's this." And I teach at the conservatory. And he's like, "Oh, so you have a job?"
Yeah, he's laughing. He's like, he's trying to insinuate that, you can't make any money off of playing instruments, so you have a real job.
But he's very definitely comic relief. And then
that's very much like what your parents would say too. What do you want to do when you grow up? You want to be a musician? Jesus, get a real job. So that
and Daria Nicolodi playing the role of Gianna,
the reporter.
She shows up. She plays basically a reporter for like a tabloidy type.
I forget how she finds out. Maybe she was tipped off that something had happened. She comes here
and she sees David Hemmings. She's like, "You're the witness."
Yeah.
And they end up forming a relationship.
Like a weird
and then there's
alliance.
a lot of comedy in there too.
Yeah.
So there's there's some.
And this is what got cut out to the American version. A lot of the interplay of their comedy, the back and forth in the scenes with the two of them, like being, again, for the lack of a better term, the like Grant and Hepburn kind of back and forth or whatever,
Yeah, and it
the romantic
works.
sparring.
I mean, it's genuinely like kind of funny.
Yeah. And it also goes to the credit probably because they're good actors. You know what I mean? So you can't have it be they're shitty and it's not it's.
I mean, even though she's dubbed in English, and I don't think it's her real voice, but it works. There's a chemistry there. They're both good. He's surprisingly good in this movie. A lot of people get kind of. There's a very funny dichotomy that goes on between actors and Argento. Everybody talks about Argento hates actors. Hitchcock was right; they're cattle, kind of thing. And he doesn't give a fuck. He's more interested in the camera moves, which are plentiful in this
That's
movie.
Another thing to mention. We should get into that the camera doesn't stop. The camera is almost like if you talk about other movies where, like, say, the city is a character in the movie or the landscape. In this movie, almost the camera is its own character, running around. Like there's a scene where later on in the movie where someone's going to open the door to an apartment, so the camera's on the principal. It's almost like it's an animal. The camera is looking at our principal actor in the scene, and then the camera on its own runs away and runs up to the front door, and then you see the doorknob turning, and it's very freaky to think that like I said, it's like an animal or it's someone else like giving you that knowledge of look what's happening. And instead of cutting from, say, that person to the door, the camera just runs, and it's genius. The whole movie is just the camera doesn't like stopping.
But the funny thing is, everybody will talk about how Argento hates actors, but then you talk to the actors, and they're like, "Oh, working with Dario was great." They all have pleasant memories of working with him. But because plot and things are typically not that important in Argento's movies.
Per genre.
You could argue that the performances suffer.
Yeah.
Typically for those reasons. But I think David Hemmings, he really brings it. He's a talented guy. He started up in theater. Of course, he was in Blow Up. We talked about he worked forever. Still, he was in Gladiator. I mean, he's in one of our favorite movies that you turned me on to, Murder by Decree. By Bob Clark.
Okay.
I mean, he grew, as he grew older, he kind of filled out. He became less recognizable.
Maybe that's how I don't.
As the guy in Deep Red.
Yeah, who is he in Gladiator? Do you know offhand? I haven't seen that movie since it came out.
I haven't seen it since the theater.
What's his face is in that we love? What's his name? Who died doing that picture? who's in freaking Burnt Offerings, and
he's in The Brood.
And The Brood, great, very large. Oliver Reed.
Oliver Reed. Yeah.
God bless Oliver Reed. He's up there with like who would win a drinking match between Oliver Reed and George C. Scott? You know what I mean? Yeah, that's a question, Mr. Owl. We'll have to pose it to Mr. Owl. But we'll never know. Sorry.
But you're right. We have these really great performances by
our principals.
Yeah, by Hemmings. Nickelodeon's great in it. This is her first movie with Argento. She ends up becoming, in a lot of ways, his muse. She's in a lot of his movies. Even after they break up, she's in opera. And spoiler alert for people who haven't seen opera yet. He's like, you need to be in opera. And he's like, why? He said, because I need to kill you. So she's in that movie specifically so he can come up with... She's in his movies basically so she can come up with weird ways to kill her.
There's a very funny story which I think I might stop us down to talk about very quickly. We had, in film school, you know this story. In film school, we had an acting teacher named Laszlo Szabo. And Laszlo Szabo was a very famous... genre French actor. He was in a lot of Jean-Luc Godard movies.
Yeah, Truffaut's
movies.
Big part of the French New Wave. Even though he wasn't French, he was Hungarian.
But he was part of the French New Wave because he got in with those guys. And his name is Laszlo Szabo, but in those movies he was always Laszlo Kovacs because Laszlo Kovacs was like John Smith over there in Europe and France. So anyway, he's there circa 97, 98. He's teaching acting class. And Blake and I become friends with him. So we go out to the pub with him and drink and talk, and he'd tell us stories about hanging out with Catherine Deneuve. He told us he bedded Catherine Deneuve. And he told us that, all these people, and he's telling us about the glory days of who he's met and who he's hung out with. So near the end of our freshman year, we're doing our freshman films, and he's like, I'd like to see the cut of, your movie. I'd like to see your cut. So I take him to see my movie. My movie's a serial killer film. And in it, it's a serial killer. In one scene, he's killing a hooker. So we go to the room. In the old days, it was we shot film. So we're in the room with the editing equipment, with the Steenbecks, with the moviolas, the reel-to-reel, like the actual thing. And we're watching it on the little screen, the editing screen. And he's watching the scene with the hooker. And he stops me. He goes, "Let me ask you a question. The hooker, is that your girlfriend?" And I go, "Yeah, it is actually my girlfriend." He goes, "That's funny." He goes, "All my friends, they put their wives in their pictures and they kill them." And he goes, "You can only kill them once, you understand, because the second time it is for real." And I've always remembered that. I was like, "Okay, Laszlo, thank you very much." Let's start this back up. And I thought that was a very funny thing. Sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
Laszlo.
God bless him.
My favorite Laszlo story is he was a huge lover of Buster Keaton.
Oh, yes.
And was probably very pivotal in my obsession with Buster Keaton as well, because he lent me like tapes of Buster Keaton.
That's the thing, Laszlo was so giving, where he had that original Hitchcock Truffaut book where Truffaut interviews Hitchcock. He had it signed by Truffaut, like, "Hey, great seeing you again. Let's hang out soon, my friend." And then he lent it out to us.
Yeah.
And then a friend of ours wasn't giving it back in time, and it was like that upset me. It's like, give the fucking,
Yeah.
So
it's a big fucking deal.
Yeah, he was giving stuff
signed
out.
by Truffaut.
Yeah, signed by Truffaut, like to a good friend. You know what I mean? Like, so anyway, you're Buster Keaton.
So when I started getting into Buster Keaton, and one of the films I made was an homage to Buster Keaton, but was
in film school.
Yeah, in film school. And so he would lend me these tapes, and I got very into Buster Keaton very much because of him. And my favorite story is he sat at a table with Buster Keaton at a film festival.
Yeah.
And he's like, "I sat with Buster Keaton," and he's like, "and I made him laugh." And he took such pride in that he made my stone face. He made the stone face laugh.
I mean, for myself, I met the comedian Eddie Izzard once where I work, and I started talking because I'm a huge Eddie Izzard fan. It was just the two of us, and he made a joke, and I laughed, and then I realized he made a joke just for me.
Yeah.
And that was like special. And then like I have a James Mason impression, and my James Mason impression is off of his James Mason impression. So we started throwing James Mason impressions back. And then
James Mason impression is off of your James Mason impression of his James
Mason. Eddie Izzard. So it's just fun to, when you have those intimate moments where like something happens, like, and it's like, Laszlo made Buster laugh. It's like, wow, you'll remember that to your grave. But never kill her twice.
So Dario Niccolodi and Dario Argento.
Yeah.
So we get the comedic factor, which, there's definitely some funny stuff in Bourbon Crystal Plumage, but comedy, let's say intentional comedy.
Yeah. But it works.
Is not typical of Argento's movies.
No.
People will laugh at them because of campiness or a datedness.
Yeah.
But intentional comedy, not as big of a thing in Argento movies. And this movie is chock full of it, and it works.
Yeah, and it works good, especially in the original Italian cut if you see it in its entirety. And maybe that goes to the further point of why this movie was such an international commercial success, as well as regarded as probably, aside from in America, Suspiria being his, Well,
you talk to somebody who's Italian, who lives in Italy.
This is interesting, too. Here's another story of ours, because you had a guitar player.
But every time, because I'm such an Argento fan, every time I would meet somebody that was from Italy, I would ask them about Dario Argento, because you hear things about Dario Argento that he's huge there, that he's a big deal,
of course,
So I'm always curious, like, is that true? Like, how big is he? And I worked on a film. I produced and was the director of photography on a feature film that never saw the light of day. But that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But one of the lead actors in it was Italian.
Yeah.
Not Italian American, from Italy.
Off the plane.
So I said, let me ask you a question. I want to how big is Dario Argento over there? And he's like Spielberg here. Like, wow. That's how big. He's the Italian Spielberg.
Which is profound to think that, like, Spielberg makes movies that you can argue are fucked up and very demeaning to children, but he is regarded here as a family. Everyone will take their word.
And the movie that every Italian cites as being like the movie is Deep Red. They're like, oh, Profondo Rosso, scariest movie of all time. He's like, I can't even watch it again. Like, they all have seen Profondo Rosso, Deep Red.
Well, we haven't talked.
Is the movie.
We haven't talked about Goblin or Claudio Simonetti yet, but I saw a little featurette Simonetti was saying that people for years would come up to him and say, I guess the score in Deep Red is it's almost like, I wouldn't say like Hitchcock Psycho, but it's very thought-provoking. It's freaky. Once people hear that, they start getting scared. And I mean, you got to think of the time this came out in. You know what I mean? Like I said, it's one of these movies, like, look at Psycho. Psycho only has, 3 murders in it, I think, maybe?
Yeah.
Janet Leigh, Martin Balsam, and maybe, I forget, there's somebody else in there. So it's like, you think of these movies, and it's crazy to think that, like, you think of it, it's a horror movie, there's chock full of, but it's your mind playing tricks on you. Yeah. So... And
I used to have the guitar player, I used to have a guitar player in my band who was from Italy, and I asked him, I said, what about Argento? And his response was very funny, because he was very much like... it's like he was saying he's not that big. Like, he's not that big of a deal over there. But then he just kept on, like, as he went on
in the conversation.
He was just like contradicting. He like corrected himself slowly. And he's not that big. And at the end, it was like, oh, but everybody knows who he is, and everybody's seen Deep Red. And the thing is, he's a star. He's a bona fide star. When he walks down the street, people flock to him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, because not only does he make these movies, but he, starting with Door in the Darkness,
the TV show,
the TV show, he's been on television.
Yeah. And you make
talking to Alan Jones. For soccer games, European football, they will have him in
as a commentator
to talk about soccer games.
I wonder if he's a big soccer fan.
Like he's a face that everybody knows.
You said to me, as well as getting into reality TV, they all have their own versions of whatever show we have or England has. He becomes one of these celebrity guest judges.
Yeah. Well, his Asia, I don't know if she's off it now, but this year Asia was on the Italian version of Dancing with the Stars, and he was on it, like, supporting his daughter.
Yeah. So that's really so much so where, in my personal opinion, his movies kind of waned in recent years after the 80s, or in maybe 90s. But he's still very much within the public light because he's still doing these appearances.
He's on shows.
And that's very, he may not make a movie in 20 years, which in this case he's been making movies, but at least he's still there. He's not like, like hiding away like a Stanley Kubrick, living in his house. Like he's very much like a Hitchcock, like you said.
Like Carpenter tells a story where he was in Italy or something. They were somewhere together, and he and Dario Argento went to see like an Egyptian exhibit at a museum. And which, first of all, just think like how awesome that is
to go with
that John Carpenter and Dario Argento
hanging out,
are going to a museum to see an Egyptian.
Yeah. And what year is this?
And they're both very into wrestling, so they would often talk about wrestling.
And that's why a lot of people don't know, but we're getting off on topic. That's why Carpenter cast Roddy Piper because he's a big wrestling fan. Who knew?
And
for They Live.
And Carpenter says that like the most astonishing thing was to see how the kids love him. Like,
Wow.
because it's a museum and there was like school field trips there and stuff.
So children
are like flocking around.
Well, it's Buon Giorno.
So you're
Dario.
right to think that
he's transcended these genres and cultures, and he's basically making the equivalent of either John Carpenter or Gorier. He's doing the equivalent of, like, I don't know, at the time, Ty West today, or freaking somebody who's making like
Eli Roth, whatever.
But he's out there like
James Wan. I mean, he's making violent movies. Now, because of this story, I mean, it's a decent segue into the music of the movie, which originally he hires Giorgio Gasolini, a composer, like more of a classical composer, who's pretty famous in Italy. Tours. He's a name. Gasolini, I think, also worked with Argento on 5 Days in Milan and that TV show we keep talking about, Door into Darkness. So he works with Gasolini on. He hires him for Deep Red, and Gasolini. There is obviously two sides there or more to every story, but eventually that relationship on Deep Red doesn't work out. Yeah. Gasolini says it's because Argento told him he'd have 3 weeks or have like a full month or something like that. He had 30 days, and then Argento comes back. He's like, you only have 20 days. And Gasolini's like, well, I can't do it in that time. So here's what I have, and then leaves. Argento and other people say that he's listening. He starts to listen to the things that Gasolini is writing, and Argento is in his head just like, it's not right for this movie. Like, Gasolini's just not getting what I want from this, for this movie. He doesn't understand it. So whatever the story is, whatever the truth is,
he releases
they part ways.
Yeah. He tries to get Pink
Floyd
for a minute, right?
Gasolini is a touring musician at that time, so it's also taking a lot of time away from what he can do.
Yeah.
Argento, big rock guy, loves rock, during Trauma, the making of Trauma, he shut down production for like a whole day so that they could go. And he took like everybody to go see the Rolling Stones because they were on tour at the time here in America. Like big rock and roll guy. He's a young guy. I mean, he's in his 20s. Yeah. He's reinventing a genre, a popular subgenre. He wants this new sound. Even the music that Morricone did for the Animal trilogy is, for the most part, young and hip. It's very jazz fusion. I mean, it's nice. Less rock.
Yeah.
Four Flies on Grey Velvet is a little more rock. It's probably the most rock score that Morricone ever did, but it's still not like super rocky. So he's like, like everybody, people are obsessed with British rock, So he's like, he loves Deep Purple, he loves Pink Floyd. He goes to England because he wants to meet with Pink Floyd about them doing the music for Deep Red. I don't even know if he ever got that far. They weren't interested. He comes back.
That would have been, imagine how different, because then you see, I think Pink Floyd shows up in Manhunter, maybe? The end of Manhunter, they're in that client. So you just think of like how meta that would have been of having Pink Floyd be in there doing deeper. That would have been an awesome, like a lost, like Lalo Schifrin's Lost
and if you
soundtrack to Exorcist. Like,
and if you watch the documentary about Jodorowsky's Dune, he wanted Pink Floyd to write music for that, and then that film never got made. But so he comes back to Italy and he's asking around. Carlo Bixio runs a record label called Cinevox, which does a lot of soundtracks and stuff. And he's talking to Carlo, and he's like, I really want a rock band to do the score for this. I want Pink Floyd. I want Deep Purple. Bixio's like, Dario, what are you talking about?
Get your chair there.
He's like, there are plenty of Italian bands that could do this for you. And he says,
maybe some girls getting raped. No, let's keep it talking.
So he says, there's this Italian band called Cherry 5.
Yeah.
He's like, they just cut a record. Take the record home. Listen to it. Just give them a chance. So he takes it home, and there's the history of Goblin could warrant an entire podcast series.
Of course. Since you've interviewed Claudio Simonetti, the head of Goblin, and
another member of Goblin. Yeah. It's just like the history of Goblin is complicated and intricate and long. But he takes Cherry. So there's this thing about Cherry 5 that doesn't need. You read about it if you. Cherry 5 was the name that the record label came up with. The name of the band was actually Oliver.
Okay.
And for some reason, when the record came out, it said Cherry 5.
As you do.
Claudio's
Hey.
Claudio's like, what the fuck?
Allora.
It's not even the name of the band.
Andiamo.
So he takes the Cherry 5 record home, and there's a specific track on it that opens with like wind and voices and stuff, and he's listening to it with Dario Argento, and he's like, that's it, these are my guys. Like, it's got like an eerie feel to it. Dario Argento likes the band a lot.
That's his girlfriend.
His girlfriend at the time.
Because they're both Dario.
Yeah. So he says, fine, I'm in. Like, these guys are it. So he goes back. He sets up with the members of Goblin. To this day, Claudio Simonetti is a collaborator of Argento's. I asked Claudio in my book, Scored to Death plug. Check it out. It's on pre-order for Amazon.
Whoa!
I said, what was it like? Had you seen his movies before? Like, did you know who he was? And he's like, yeah, of course. He's like, I've seen his movie. I loved his movies. He relating to the story that was kind of our rough segue into this, is his analogy was, we were like 22-year-old guys, and it was like if Steven Spielberg walked into the room and was like, I want you to write music for Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Wow.
It was like, he was a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
And he comes in and he's like, I want you to write the music.
For my new horror movie.
So he plays them records, tons of records. Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells, which became famous because of, not because of, but it's in use of film, it's famous because Friedkin used it in The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Which, having written a book about horror film music, the fact that
Which is coming, the book coming out.
Friedkin put that in there changed the game.
Yeah.
Influenced, Goblin, then Carpenter, Tangerine Dream, who then Friedkin kind of introduces into the realm himself. But all this comes from the fact that Tubular Bells is used in The Exorcist. So one of the things is Tubular Bells. Plays them all this kinds of stuff, probably a lot of Pink Floyd, and kind of lets them run wild. Of course,
is the story that they actually penned like 2 or 3 tracks in one night?
Well, yeah, because the whole thing was probably, obviously, they had seen a cut of the movie by that point. By that point, we're in post, but they weren't composing to the picture. That's why in Italian movies, a lot of it, the music cuts and stuff are very kind of almost jarring because they're actually not composing to picture. They see the movie and then they go back.
They just do like
they just do
jam session.
They just record a bunch of music and then Dario and the editor sit there and just chop it in. And that's the way it worked. Not just with Dario, with everybody. And it's part of like the whole style of those Italian exploitation movies is how the music is cut in.
Because here, one or 2 cuts here were just stopped.
Yeah, it's like it's not even like the band cuts.
They don't even fade it out.
They just cut the tape.
Yeah, there it is. They just put some leader on afterward.
So what they do is they take some of
Goblin.
What Goblin does, and they become named Goblin because they were basically like, well, we have this other thing going on with Oliver, or AKA Cherry 5, and that doesn't sound that great for this kind of movie. And we also don't want to get them confused because we don't want to be pigeonholed as the guys that do film scores. So let's call ourselves Goblin for this.
Yeah.
Then we'll have like 2 bands. It'll be the same guys, but we'll be like Cherry 5 or Oliver.
It's almost like what an author does. Like Stephen King there's too much Stephen King out there, so he'll write under what's his pen name? He has another pen name. So he just puts the fountain. It's why
so they
distinguish it.
So they call themselves Goblin. What they do is they take some of Gasolini's
original stuff before he left.
That he left, and they play it.
Yeah.
They re-record it. They change some of the arrangements, but they record it as Goblin.
Yeah.
So if you get the original LP, the piece of vinyl, pressed vinyl, the side B, side 2 is all of Gasolini. Everything not everything that he wrote, but everything that was released that they did. It's like,
is it Gasolini playing it? Or
no,
it's the Goblin's arrangements of
there's
Gasolini
like
stuff.
the lullaby, I think, is Gasolini playing it, and maybe one other track, but the rest is Goblin playing Gasolini's compositions.
That lullaby that we keep hearing that's echoed through, we have to get this cast going because we're so saturated with information. Yeah. That lullaby we hear, that's actually Gasolini's lullaby,
wrote that,
which is a haunting lullaby.
Yeah.
I've learned any kind of lullaby in a horror movie is frightening.
Yeah.
So anyway.
And the first side of the album is played by Goblin and written by Goblin.
Yeah.
to get off the music thing, that album becomes a number 1 hit.
Yeah.
Like, that was a huge hit.
Wow.
The soundtrack to that album was like...
Well, maybe that's why we...
Sold millions of copies, won like the Italian Grammys, version of the Grammys, was a huge thing, and that's why they've been gobbling ever since, because they became huge stars because of that album.
And I wonder if that's why it's so polarizing, that soundtrack, that they have people still coming up to him saying that when I hear that, that music...
Well, that like arpeggiating stuff sounds a little bit like Tubular Bells in the main theme, and then, of course, Carpenter... has a similar vibe to the Halloween theme.
Well, Carpenter, which is, I guess we can get into later, but he's heavily influenced by this movie, as is some other people Argento likes to say.
Yeah.
For Halloween 2.
According to Carpenter, before he made Halloween, he had only seen Suspiria.
Yeah.
Was really the only thing.
Which is 77, right?
Suspiria's like 77-ish.
Yeah.
And then Halloween is 78.
Okay.
And so that was a huge hit. To go into, to get into the more like the film theory type stuff, since we're on the music, you talk about the lullaby.
Yeah.
Now, it's an interesting device here because it's something that the killer needs to be able to perform the murder. It becomes both diegetic within the film and non-diegetic outside the film. It's something that we hear as a viewer that carries the movie, but it's something. It's something that the killer will turn on a tape player,
which means it's diegetic.
So we get to. It clues us into something that the murder is going to happen. It's the device that the murderer needs to take them into that mind space. So we start to.
It also becomes a haunting thing that Hemmings has to go track down, and he finds a copy of it.
It becomes like a very diegetic part of
and that leads
the
him
narrative
on his the clue. Down the road of clues to figure out. Then the next step is he finds out that there is a woman who wrote a female author who wrote a book on celebrated local folklore, and there was a murder in this house. Where people were killed and the child was left on its own, and it's become very polarized or very for the locals. So then our Hemmings like, I'm going to go search out. Maybe this has something to do.
In a nutshell. Basically, we talked about Hemmings witnesses this murder.
Of the psychic.
The story...
Him and the reporter
what becomes the narrative, in a nutshell, is basically... Immediately, Hemmings realizes that there's something weird about the murder site. And he can't put his finger on it.
Something that happened that night when he was in there. He knows something... He thinks that a painting was taken away.
Something was not there. Something strange.
Something was there when he saw it, but then when by the time the cops got there, something was moved, and he keeps telling. And that's a device that has become for Argento kind of, but also in this giallo, because I think De Palma does it in a couple of his early movies, where it's like there's a clue within the memory.
Yeah.
That the
totally.
character.
It's something that Argento is. I'd say 95% of Argento's movies, 90% of Argento's movies are fueled by a protagonist that witnesses something like a murder, if not a murder, and then there's something about the murder that doesn't sit right with them. A memory that is lost, or something that they know there's more to it.
They brushed over.
It's that obsession that drives them through the story to solve the murder. So for Hemmings, it's this idea of like, there's something weird about this site. So I'm remembering it differently. Yeah. And that becomes his motivation. When we get into De Palma or The Conversation, they have the device of like the tape player.
Yeah.
But in Deep Red, it's all in his memory. There's no like exterior thing to examine.
Yeah, they can't go back and rewind, listen to it. There's something there. It's like, Sixth Sense, where you turn it up and you can hear the whispering of the ghost talking to the kid.
Yeah.
What I will give credit to Argento, where a lot of times these kind of people, this is the kind of thing that like people used to get mad at, like English authors with like, when they kill somebody and leave a body in the room, and that would be the reason for a crime, where they'd leave a fact out until the last scene. Yeah, and it's like, of course the audience couldn't figure it out because only Hercule Poirot could, because he knew that that clue that was left out for us. For Argento's credit, that clue that we're talking about here is in that shot when we walk in. And if you don't see it, you may not notice it. And I remember when I watched this with my wife, I showed it to her. She saw it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't even see it. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Well, that's the interesting thing.
So my point is, just to finish my point is, a lot of times you'll see trickery.
Yeah.
Where
Well,
at the
even
end of the movie,
Yeah.
it'll be slipped back in. You're like, that wasn't in the original cut.
Even Argento is guilty of that.
Oh, he is, but not in this movie.
But not in this movie.
Yeah.
In this, he plays fair. And what's there is there. But you also have to take into account that this is at a time where you saw this in the movie theater and that was it. There was no rewinding.
Of course.
You know, like you weren't going to projectionists. Wait, hold up.
Yeah,
roll
rewind
it.
it.
You saw it and maybe you saw it one time.
Yeah.
There was no home video. So to slip something like that by them, and we'll explain it very soon in terms of what that clue is. But this is what drives him. And then he forms this partnership with the photographer.
The reporter.
She's interested in.
Well, it's funny. She takes a picture of him, and she's like, "All right." Then the next day, it's like front page of the paper.
Yeah.
Like,
he witnessed the murder.
and he knows who did it. So then later on in the movie, we have where he's at his apartment, and there's an attempt on his life by the killer, and he's luckily able to shut the door in time, and you hear very haunting. You hear the killer like, "I know you're gonna die soon," and that's always freaky for me. And he kind of you can't tell if it's a male or female. Just a whisper like, "I'm here, and I'm gonna kill you next." And it's funny. I put a note in my notepad when we're watching this movie. He's on the front page of the major, Rome newspaper saying, "I know who the killer is," or "I saw the killer," and he's leaving his door unlocked.
Yeah.
It's like, who cares?
So we get this. That's basically what drives the story, and then he ends up forming a bit of a romantic relationship. There's a very Star Trekian Kirk, sex scene where it's we're with them at a funeral.
Yeah,
and then it cuts to them putting on clothes in Hemings' apartment.
Yeah, it's very
implying that they had sex.
But the devices he uses, getting with the attempt on his life, the killer's above his apartment on the roof, and he's in there doing something. Maybe he's he's maybe composing, and some of the plaster off the ceiling falls.
Yeah,
and it's so awesome that the audience sees this.
Yeah,
and the audience. Well, he may not put one and one together, but it's because the killer's up on the ceiling of the roof, walking around, looking through his skylight down at him. So it's very suspenseful, Hitchcockian way for us, because the old Hitchcock thing where he says, I'm getting too off topic, where he says that there's two people at a cafe sitting there, and then a bomb goes off underneath the table. Okay, that's shocking, but that's it. It's just a shock. But if you do the same scene again and you show the audience that bomb underneath the table, and then the suspense of just the two people talking about in baseball, he's the audience will be like, get the hell out of there. It builds the suspense factor up. So it's brilliant how he does that.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly a master of his craft. But this idea of this lost memory, which is a repeating theme, or this incorrect memory or whatever, this clue, is what drives Hemings through the story. And then it just becomes him basically trying to solve the murder, and at the same time the murderer is tying up the loose ends at the same time, killing the other guy that's involved in the paranormal demonstration.
Yeah, her assistant. He gets killed by
he finds this.
He gets killed by the almost getting, what do you call that, curbed on the side of it's horrible death.
The book that you brought up that the record leads him to this book that this woman wrote about the house,
a local history of the unsolved murders, or
she gets murdered before he can get
in the middle.
there.
Yeah, that's another scary scene where she lives out in the Italian countryside. So she's got this nice little villa on a main road, and she's talking to some elderly lady. She walks in, she gets scared and runs out, and it's very scary. The elderly woman's already on the bus leaving, and she's I'm by myself, and then she gets killed by boiling water.
Yeah.
That's very freaky. That whole scene there.
So basically, that's the plot. Going back to the idea of this lullaby children theme. It becomes both diegetic, non-diegetic. It's a part that it drives the plot, yet it's also part of the music. It becomes the clue to the audience that something's going to happen. It becomes, in some ways, motivation for the killer. It's very reminiscent of things like M.
Yeah, Fritz Lang's M, which we talked about in our Mad Love cast.
Where the killer will whistle in the Hall of Mountain King. Yeah. That theme becomes a very important thing,
because people associate that with the killer, where when they're looking for him, when he's around, that's what he's whistling.
The idea of that they need to revisit, they need this trigger thing. The killer needs this trigger. This needs to play this to get in the mindset to do it. Needs to play this piece of music to then be able to commit murder is very reminiscent of Peeping Tom.
Yeah.
Which is, in that case, it's the camera. He needs to be looking through the camera.
Which is a movie that we've talked about.
Which we've brought up.
And we're probably going to do a whole cast on at some point.
And then
great horror movie from 59 or 58, English horror
60.
movie? 60.
And then the idea of this music being part of these two different aspects of the film is totally Leone.
Yeah.
It's For a Few Dollars More. It's the harmonica in Once Upon a Time in the West.
Oh. And it's used brilliantly in For a Few Dollars More, which is you and our favorite of the spaghetti trilogy, which we always say gets really underhanded. People love Fistful of Dollars, the first one, and love the third one, but come on, the second one's amazing.
So it's this device that is very
brilliant.
It's very Leone, and like undoubtedly likely influenced by Leone.
Yeah.
Argento's use of it.
I just had an idea, a thought that escaped me now.
Now,
that.
also, what becomes, if we flash forward, and there's some other things we can backtrack on if we need to, but if we flash forward at the end.
I'm sorry. Yeah. We, as the audience, we hear this theme at the very opening.
Yeah.
In that flashback of Christmas Day where we see that murder in shadow. That's what we hear this. So that's how that piece retains with us.
Yeah.
So there's a clue that's getting back that we don't know why to that first shot of the movie of this murder that we saw.
But it's also playing on our expectations of an audience. That first scene is playing on our expectations of the audience created by films like Psycho and Peeping Tom of childhood trauma.
Yeah.
A very Freudian kind of look on things. We see this child's feet. We actually don't know the sex of the child.
No, we don't. No. We just see stockings and shoes,
And we hear this theme, and we hear this theme throughout the thing, and us as an audience make this connection that child is very likely
to be the killer now.
Yeah. Childhood trauma is
huge in horror.
Like I said, Psycho, Peeping Tom.
The German's Tin Drum that I brought up a little while ago, that movie, it's always a good basis of...
and in this movie, we have both the child that witnesses this murder at Christmas, and we also have this girl whose dad owns the keys to the house, who she's kind of fucked up.
This is weird. Now, so what happens is... Hemmings, our lead, gets a picture
in the book that we have discussed already.
The authors who ends up getting killed.
There's a picture of a house.
Yeah, so he's trying to figure out where this house is. So he's running around, I guess, suburbs of Rome to find this house, and he finally finds the house. What it looks like, and he goes to the gentleman who owns the house, and he's like, I don't really own it. I'm the caretaker. Somebody else. It hasn't been owned in years since there was a big traumatic incident that happened there. Whoever else owns it's been out of the country for years. He might be dead, but I'm taking care of it. He's like, can I see into it? And he's like, yeah. So he gives him the keys. Now this guy, the caretaker, owns his daughter, this little redhead girl.
He's an owner, but he has a daughter.
Well, he's the caretaker, but
so
he said he owns the daughter.
He owns this daughter.
Yeah, he has a daughter, and at first I thought it was almost like a sexual relationship with it's very much like the girl's weird and she's acting weird, so maybe he has some sort of incestual relationship. So the Hemmings leaves to go look at the house, and he looks down at the daughter and he just slaps her in the face. He slaps her a couple times. Like, I told you not to do that again. And you're like, Jesus, he's being an asshole. Like, this is child abuse. She runs away to what? She goes to show. He's like,
my daughter will take you to. We'll show you where the house is.
Yeah, and while he when he turns, he like slaps the shit out of her. Like, I told you never to do this again. And she runs away, and then it cuts to this shot of him.
Well, Hemmings is like, what did you do? She's like, oh, he's crazy.
Yeah. So then
he does that sometimes.
He leaves, and then it cuts down, and this is a very controversial for a lot of aspects. The reason why this scene that was put back in, it cuts to his face, and then the camera
father's face,
the caretaker, right before the scene ends, and it zips right down to his feet, and on the ground, on the gravel, is this little lizard that it looks like a hairpin.
Yeah, like a push pin or something.
A push pin stuck through this little poor lizard's head, and it's withering in pain on the ground.
Yeah.
So the implication is that this little freaking bitch is, this is happening. She's doing this, and we know now because of 21st century psychology that this is like serial killers start by doing this, harming animals. This, of course, is a real animal. This is the 70s, and of course, freaking Italians on top of it. We've talked about how Italians were very unforgiving towards animals in these movies. Yeah. So they did this, and this was controversial. So this was cut right out of a lot of releases.
Well, a lot of these things in the aspect of this movie,
and there's no reason. That's like a throwaway. That's not central to the plot.
No, but it's an interesting character development in that what we find out later about the girl. But what I will say before we get to that is that there are these things in the movie. The movie, Argento's way of approaching the movie is very much like it's a nightmare. Maybe not so much as in terms of being surreal, like Suspiria is like a nightmare. But
certainly, what's the movie with? Is it Phenomenon where she's jumping in the water and going
with the maggots and stuff.
Well, she goes into this little pool of water.
Inferno,
and there's like this entire like Victorian house underwater.
Yeah.
That's it's very much like you're saying, very nightmarish.
But he becomes, he's viewing this through the way he shoots the movie with all the movement, the extreme like macro photo movement through all these like little trinkets that the killer has.
Yeah,
and the idea of like when we enter the theater in the beginning of the movie, it's like the camera's pushing in and the curtains open and we move in.
And then at the end of that scene too, the camera comes back up the hall and the curtains are brought back.
And when in the scene that you're talking about, when Hemmings is playing the piano and the killer enters his apartment and he manages to close the door and the killer whispers to him, we enter that scene through the curtain of his apartment.
Yeah.
Like the curtain opens up and the camera comes in. It's drawing attention that like there's something not realistic about this movie. And there's all these little elements that Argento puts in, like the lizard, like the dogs fighting.
Yeah, there's another scene.
Which is an homage to The Exorcist.
Yeah.
All these little things that are just there to create like an unsettling atmosphere for the viewer. Yeah, keep you on your toes as a viewer. Like there's something fucked up about this movie.
Yeah, and it progressively gets worse because there's a scene they just cut to like as a bumper, these two dogs just fighting in the street, which lasts like 7 to 10 seconds, and that's it. And that's the other very controversial act of animal cruelty. They say that was cut right out after its initial release and hadn't seen the light of day till that and the lizard scene were put back in.
In Exorcist, there's dogs fighting, so this is a very deliberate.
Yeah,
Argento and Friedkin were friends by that point.
So it's like an homage as well.
It's a little homage.
But it unsettles the audience, like you're saying.
Sure, I mean it does. It creates this tension.
Yeah, you don't know like it's racking up the like you're saying the tension, and he does a lot of great, really close-up things. There's when they put the record on to listen to the when he buys the record of the lullaby, some really great. It looks like they built the record player like they built like what's his face's ear from Wrath of Khan. They built like a huge prop.
Yeah.
I mean, they get in there so detailed with the record needle going around the record. It looks like it's huge.
Yeah.
And then you're saying as well, there's these weird bumpers that you don't really understand what they are between scenes of this like dark room, and there's just this table, and it's very close up of all these trinkets where it's like
some marbles,
some thread, a little baby doll.
Yeah.
And you don't know what they're.
It's playing into this aspect
within the background, the lullaby.
Yeah.
So you're like, what the hell is this?
It's playing into this aspect of the childhood trauma, and that the
gloves, the black gloves are on the table too. Zoom very close,
and that the killer needs to be brought back to like this childhood state to be able to commit the murders. That's why as an audience we're assuming that that's what is going on with the record, and it's almost like
it's like psychosis, the split personality almost.
Yeah,
like Norman Bates with his mother, or even with years later, 1980 New York Ripper, aka Don't Torture a Duckling, where the killer is like, I want to kill you, quack quack quack. It's like it's weird.
This idea, the way the photograph is amazing. They use, for those kinds of shots, they use this thing called the snorkel, which was like at the time, a very new like fiber optic style camera to shoot all that stuff. So Argento always very into technology.
Yeah.
Print like
in the '96 Stendhal syndrome. There's a lot of CGI in it, like because that was cutting edge right there of like a bullet entering and going through the body.
But even
so you see all that.
Tenebrae with the tracking shot of the outside of the apartment. If you've seen Tenebrae, there's this like that's always quoted as being an Argento technological kind of like achievement of like this giant tracking shot that goes like down this apartment building goes from the window of an apartment building, then down the building, across the building, to another window.
Yeah, and isn't there another one too? It's almost, is it one of either Bird with the Crystal Plumage or the next one where it's like nowadays in football games they have these autonomous cameras set up on wires.
Yeah.
So you can get it'll come down, it'll get you right in the mix of the action, it'll come up, and isn't that there's like
well, Suspiria has like a camera on a zip line.
That's what it must be.
As the blind
going through like
the
a
blind
courtyard.
Pianist is walking through the courtyard
and being attacked by like a bird or something.
And Opera has like a swirling like a crow attached to a camera on a crane, and as the crow flies around, the camera follows this.
Yeah,
crow
there's a lot of also because they end up killing that bird in the bird cage in this movie, and that looked like it was a real bird they killed because when it drops on the ground, you see it relaxing.
It looks like it's fake blood, but it's
a real fucking bird. They just stabbed it,
dropped some paint onto it.
Yeah, and because the bird's relaxing, you're like, Jesus, can you stop with all the killing of the animals here? But you bring up a good point with the setting this up that this is not reality. This is almost like a nightmare. As the movie goes on, this almost explains away a lot of this conscious camera movements, where it's like you as a viewer within your dream or looking at someone else's dream or nightmare are seeing things that are not privy to the person, and that's
like the doll.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's a scene. Yeah, near the end. So we got to keep this propelling because we're running out of time. So there's a scene and that's horrific, where this doll comes out and it just looks like a little person with a mask on, and it's like a ventriloquist doll. It comes running out and they hit it over the head. It falls and its head breaks open.
It ends up being like an autonomous.
Yeah, like a little wind up doll. But I've never seen something that intricate like that. But it's the face of it is almost like the Saw face. Yeah. Now that kind of whatever that killer wears.
It's definitely,
and it's in like a little suit. It's almost like Charlie McCarthy.
It's a completely irrational and illogical device for the movie.
There's no reason for it to be
there. Works because it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's really bringing up the tension in the audience to just really get them on the edge of their seat. So the author's killed.
But you were saying Hemmings goes into the house.
Yes, the Hemmings. So the little girl brings him into the house after we see the reveal of she's killing animals. He goes into the house. He's looking around, and then he catches on the wall, plastered over, is like a little mural that he starts doing with his hands. And I commented to you like, Jesus, he's going to kill his
entire
nails.
Scene is no dialogue. He's experimenting through this house. Goblin score, which is essentially a blues riff.
Yeah.
And so it's like another like kind of completely something that shouldn't work for the film works so well. And that particular song, even when I was interviewing people from the book, Nathan Barr, who wrote the music for Cabin Fever and all this thing, he's like, well, like, look at Goblin. He's like a guy's exploring a house to a blues song.
Yeah, it works. It wrecks up and it's funny because in script logic, he's exploring the house and he leaves. He's like, I want to come back at night when it's much more scary. And he comes back at night and he's in there and he finds this mural. He starts using his fingers, and I told you, he's gonna kill his nails with that. And he takes it off, and it's this mural of someone being stabbed at other side.
And it's like a child drawing. Basically, looks like a child holding a bloody knife.
That's stabbing someone.
And then someone with standing over him with a big stab wound.
Yeah, and then he leaves, and then what the audience sees, he doesn't see, is that I don't know, something happens. More of the plaster falls, and then there's a third person behind the person being stabbed. Which is kind
of brilliant.
It's brilliant. And then we have what is it? The juvenile's caught, and the juvenile there, oh no, the little girl. It's the little redhead.
They go to the
little redhead's caught for something, and then remember they ask her.
Well, they go to his apartment. They go to the guy who has the little girl. They go to their house.
Oh,
he sees the drawing.
Yeah.
And Hemmings sees that she redrew that. He's like, where did you see this?
Yeah.
You couldn't have seen it in the house.
He starts.
He's like, and the father's like, she just makes that shit up. She's fucking nuts.
Yeah, she kills animals. I love her.
And she then confesses that she saw this drawing at the library at the Da Vinci school.
A closed Da Vinci. It's a Da Vinci Catholic school, a prep school that has been closed now. They have, for some reason, they've gone in there, ransacked the place. But then when they go in, it's very neat. And she says she saw this drawing. So Hemmings and the reporter go into this Da Vinci school that's closed, looking around, and for a place that's been closed for a lot of years, they keep very detailed records, and they find like the archive. They open the archive up, and a sub archive there's like children's drawings. So they start looking through then there's like years of children's drawings, and they get to like what year they're looking, like the late 50s or whatever, and they find a drawing. They start going through the drawings, and then I think he leaves, and it's just the reporter going through the drawings.
Yeah,
or they separate.
No, she leaves because then she walks into the classroom, and there's someone hanging, drawn on the blackboard.
Yeah.
And then...
Which is very much like when what spooks the author, when the author said, we're getting back to a second ago, when she's in her lonely villa, she says goodbye to the elderly woman. She walks into her house, and there's the baby doll hanging from a noose. And that's when she's like, shit, I better not stay here alone. She runs out, and the old woman's already on the bus leaving. So a lot of these elements from this person's childhood that we're seeing in these bump shots on this table to the music are now becoming played in the movie.
I mean, obviously there's a lot of details that have gotten left out, and so like if you haven't seen the movie, like even if as we wind down, there's going to be parts of it that don't make sense because there's stuff that we just we didn't go into because there's so much to talk about that this wasn't really a cast where we could sit there and like go scene by scene for every thing, or we'd be here for like 8 hours. So
and it's not the type of movie to do that. Like you can do that with like Commando.
What's interesting about it is
more nuanced.
The one thing that is kind of interesting about it is that like throughout the movie we do see that the killer puts on eyeliner. So it does play against the fact that maybe this isn't, I mean, I guess because it's ambiguous as to whether the child is a man or woman. I mean, it's always, we assume that the killer is a man.
And that's almost to our misogyny, or to our lead character's misogyny, that it's assumed that it's a man doing all these killings.
But there's a lot of kind of sexual ambiguity throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, we find out our friend Carlo, who's the drunk.
Carlo is gay, and his lover is a transvestite.
Who's actually played by a woman in the movie. Her name is... Geraldine Hooper, but they just give her like a little pencil mustache, In
a lot of ways, like Dario Nicolodi's character, Gianna, the reporter, she's masculine to a certain extent.
Yeah.
They arm wrestle. She wins the arm wrestling match.
They arm wrestle
She's
twice.
very aggressive in a way that isn't very feminine. So there's a lot of sexual ambiguity, and when we later, in some ways, you can assume that the feet we see are maybe a girl's feet in the child's feet. It ends up being a boy, and we find out. Spoiler alert! We're going to
hold on. If you haven't seen this movie up until now, this is one of these with like a twist ending, much like I would say like The Sixth Sense, sort of. So if you're at all interested in seeing this movie, we highly recommend you stopping this down right now, going and seeing the movie, and then picking right up back here at this point because we're going to spoil this. Okay, so ready? Okay.
So
hope you've left. Hope you're back.
If you're listening from this
Shame
point
on
on,
you.
it's your fault.
You should know this. So spoiler alert.
So we find out that, in the context of the movie,
we should go in order, right?
Yeah. We're led to believe now that Carlo is the killer.
There's a big reveal that it's Carlo. He's got a gun, and it's like, it was him that was the child that he saw. He killed.
I told you to fucking leave town.
Yeah, this is why he's drinking. This is why he's having this weird relationship with a transvestite because he's a killer and he's been killing all these people. And it's like, he's got a gun. He's like, I told you, get out of here.
The cops show up, and then that created a diversion. A lot of funny things happen with that detective earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of funny little jokes and stuff. But the cops show up, there's a diversion. Carlo gets away.
He runs.
Dario Nicolodi gets stabbed at some point.
With a switchblade. She's like, dying. So then Carlo gets away.
Carlo gets away. And then this fucking, tractor trailer.
It's a garbage truck's going down the road at night because they're picking up garbage and they're chatting. Of course, they're not paying attention to what's going on. And in the back of the garbage, is it a garbage truck? I thought, it's a tractor trailer.
Originally, I thought it was, but as you watch more, it just looks like maybe a
like
truck.
An 18-wheeler that has wire.
It's back. Like the metal. The big support things that you put inside like concrete.
Yeah, the concrete, like the metal ties that you put in, the ones that have like little wire wrapped around, the tension rods to stabilize like proper concrete. They're carrying like just big strands of that, and one of them is kind of like, come about, and it's hooked. That's dragging on the street. So Carlo serendipitously runs out. Truck goes by. They're not paying attention. His ankle gets hooked by it. He starts getting dragged, and it's a horrific death because he's like, and he's trying to call
getting knocked
them.
into the sidewalk.
He's getting in the
ledge.
to the gutters.
Curb.
He's trying to call, and then you're cutting back to the two guys. They're not paying attention, and they're driving it pretty fast. So the freaking back of the truck's sliding around, and he's getting whipped around, and his ass and back is getting grabbed, just dragged to horrific death on the asphalt until you say that he gets slammed against the gutter, and he's like, oh. They finally what do they realize?
I think they realize it and they stop.
They stop quick. They stop. They run out to get him, and then since the ass of the tractor
it's like
trailer
they start
truck
to make a turn. So they're turning, and so they see it. They realize it, and
rearview mirrors.
So they stop as they're turning. So
then
then
the back of the truck's still in the intersection.
yeah.
So, and then, like, they get out to stop, and then you see, from his point of view, he's all fucked up, and he's laying in the road, and you see in the background, there's just a car, two lights come in the frame.
And runs over his head.
Yeah, the guy tries
Squash
to stop.
the watermelon.
Squashes his head right now, and you're like, Jesus, what a horrific death to a horrific killer. You think the movie's over.
Movie's over. And then Hemmings is walking back through the square to get to where he lives or whatever.
And then he stops.
He
looks
like,
at
wait a second.
He looks at the Edward Hopper diner that's closed, and he's thinking there for a minute. He's thinking about all that's happened. And he says, wait a minute. He says, for fuck's sake, I was talking to Carlo when it happened.
Yeah.
So fucking...
I'm giving Carlo when I saw the killer.
Yeah, I'm giving Carlo an alibi. So it's like it couldn't have been Carlo because it was Carlo at the same time. So then he
runs back into the apartment.
The original psychic's apartment. He runs up there to the apartment. He walks in, and he's looking around, and he realizes... Is that when he realizes that his...
As he walked by, he's in the hallway, but then there's like an adjacent hallway, a perpendicular hallway.
Where all the paintings are. And this is why he kept thinking that something was wrong, a painting was taken off or whatever. As he walks by, there is a mirror that he can see when he walks by that is reflecting the opposite end of that hall. And there was a person standing against that back wall, against a painting that blended kind of into the painting. So when he walked by, he looked at the mirror reflected
and assumed that it was a painting.
It was part of that painting, but it was a woman standing there.
He thought the mirror was a painting in itself, and now there was something odd about that painting because it was the reflection of another painting with a woman's head in it.
Yeah, and the woman's head was gone.
And we find out this will be a real fucking surprise to you because we haven't even mentioned her as a character.
Yeah.
But Carlo's mother is a character in the movie.
Yeah, it's Carlo's freaking mother who's the killer in the trench coat the whole time, and it's a great reveal because they, dun, 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 and then he makes the realization. He slowly turns around.
Yeah. Now this is
she's there in the trench coat.
And here's another device that Leone used in the two Westerns we already mentioned, for $2 More and
Once Upon a Time in the West.
Once Upon a Time in the West. Something that was new, not really used in thrillers at the time, which Argento introduced in Thriller, is that we now have a flashback that explains like why this is happening.
Yeah.
We find out that she's the mother of Carlo, and there's a scene in the kitchen, and it's Christmas, and her husband's like, "We got to take you back to the hospital. It's for your own
She's
good."
like, "I won't do it." And it gets back to that original scene of the Christmas tree where it's Carlo's out playing by the Christmas tree as a young boy with his stockings and his little school outfit. Mom's in the kitchen with Dad. Dad comes in. Dad's like, "Hey, you got to go back." And she's like, "I don't want to go back." And he's like, "Well, you're gonna have to go back.
It's for your own good.
We'll talk about it later." And then he walks out of the room to go talk to Carlo by the Christmas tree. She grabs a butcher knife and then runs up behind him, and he's like, "Hey, Carlo, como va?" And then she stabs him in the back, and it's confusing because at the beginning of the movie it's like shadows, multiple stabs.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Ah!" And then she drops what does he take the knife out himself?
Something happens.
He falls on the ground, takes the knife out himself. The knife falls in front of Carlo. So basically, Carlo witnessed his mom killing his father.
Yeah. And then he walks over and picks up the knife
and looks at and then
which is the drawing that we see.
Yes, and then you see like a little nice like a 3M of really really red blood going down the knife, and he's so traumatized by this, we are led to believe he's either suppressing the memory, or he's trying to,
or he's just
hiding it,
keeping the secret. Because in essence, when he picks up this knife, he's now become an accomplice to the murder.
Yeah,
in
he's a poor child,
in a technical aspect. So now he kind of knows what's going on, and and he's basically now going to kill Hemmings so that his mother doesn't get caught.
And I think we also forgot the whole point was when Hemmings is looking at the drawing, he realizes with the painting that there's a secret room in the old house.
Yeah.
So he runs back to the house, and he's like, "How can I have been so stupid?" There's in the picture he's been looking at the whole time. There's a window that's now not in the new house. It's no longer there. So he, in a very freaky scene, like goes out on the side of the house, and he starts with like a almost like a tire iron, and he's breaking where the window would be, and he opens it up, and he's able to get in, and lo and behold, it is our flashback room. Christmas morning, Christmas tree still there. Everything is still there, like it hasn't been touched in 30 years. And there is a dead body that's mummified.
It's like a very Poe.
Yeah,
they walled it in.
Wall
the dead body.
The wall of Amanta, the cask of Amanta, whatever that one is, where the guy gets walled in.
Amandasante.
Yeah, of Amandasante, the cast of Amandasante. Amandasante gets walled in by an evil. What's his face? Yeah, I forget that. I was going to make a joke.
Moving forward.
Anyway, that joke fell on the floor. Ron Silver. It's a evil Ron Silver who wants to take over Amandasante's roles. God bless Ron Silver. That's a really low in the weeds joke. Anyway, so he realizes that in this house that there has been a murder that was committed. It was the Christmas tree there. It's been no one's known about it for how many years because it was walled. I don't know how that she walled up at the window and she did all the.
She's very handy.
Yeah, all that masonry work. So that happens right before he. I guess that's the realization. Then he makes the realization, I got to go check the apartment. It couldn't have been Carlo. And then this is where we have this flashback where the mother's killing the father in front of Carlo. Yeah. Carlos, and this explains why Carlo's a drunkard. It explains why Carlo is having all this weird sexual tension where he doesn't know if he's gay or he's straight. He's hanging out with
presumably. I mean, it's 70s point of view.
Yeah, who knows what's going on? As well as, he's been hiding the whole many years if he knows consciously or subconsciously for his mom, who's a killer and who's a nut. She's an actress in the movie, isn't she?
Yeah, she's like a retired actress.
Yeah,
and she was like a 70s, a 30s,
in real life,
a 1930s like Hollywood kind of starlet, and it's certain extent. So the
They
pictures
have all
we
these
see
pictures
of her on the wall in the scene where she tells Marcus that are her as a younger actress
earlier in the movie.
Movies and
yeah,
stuff.
and they're great, like 8x10s of her with famous actors from the 30s and 40s. So it's like, oh, that's really cool, and you can really tell. So come to find out, then she attacks him in the house. He makes the realization, that was the reflection I saw was her. She's in the trench coat. We understand why Carlo, when he sees Hemmings looks through after the initial psychic murder down and he sees the trench coated person leaving, Carlos sees that person. That's the reason why Carlos says, I didn't see anybody, because he must have realized it was his mom.
Covers it up.
Yeah, so he's like, I didn't see the person. And then we also realize that it's the mom doing it the whole time. The mom is killing all these women aside from there's one man he kills, which is the psychic's assistant. Yeah. But it's just she's doing all these murders to try to cover everything up because she's a freaking nutcase. And then how does she get
well, they struggle.
So they struggle. They break out into the hallway, and then there's this great device which is used, which the co-writer, Bernardino. Bernardio
Zapponi
says that in his, I think it's the actual building. He says in his building
there was a similar,
one of these cool elevators, these lifts that you see like in Wolf with Jack Nicholson, where it's like in the middle of the stairs where you can see through, and it's one of these old-fashioned ones where it's all like gates that close and you have up and down, and it's very nice and Art Deco-y. Yeah. So there is a struggle on the hallway. He throws her.
Like up against the shaft.
Yeah, she has a nice metal locket on that gets lodged into gets stuck.
The gating of the
and then
of the
not enough that
elevator.
she's stuck there. He's like, you're terminated, fucker.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Bichado. And then he hits the button and the elevator starts coming. And then, of course, since the elevator goes down, her necklace is stuck. And I don't know why the chain doesn't break.
Yeah,
but
it's very powerful.
It's platinum. It's really resilient steel.
They made jewelry to last back then.
And she goes down, and then it's disgusting.
She pulls, her body gets pulled to the gate of the elevator shaft as the elevator's pulling on her necklace, and it basically chops her head off.
Yeah, decapitates her. You see all this blood appear, and then you see as a close-up, it rips right through her neck.
Rip into her neck, and then we see that then we just see like the bloody necklace going down the elevator.
It's brilliant. The bloody necklace just sitting there stranded, all bloody. And then at the end of the movie, you see Carlo, her body must fall on the floor, and she must bleed out. And there's a pool of blood with Carlo's reflection. I'm sorry, Marcus's reflection. I'm confusing everybody. And then that's how the movie ends.
With like a freeze frame of Marcus's reflection in a pool of blood.
And in the original cut, the Italian cut, it's you could see him reacting, like opening up his, closing his eyes, blinking, so it's still there. But in the American version, which they kept up until I guess 2009, the Anchor Bay release, is a freeze frame with the credits over.
Yeah, but of course, in typical Argento fashion, and I never see this with other Italian movies, or I just haven't noticed it, the credits start to roll and it says, "You have been watching."
Oh, really?
Which is like Suspiria. You have been watching Suspiria.
Yeah, stay tuned for more.
It's like a credit rolls up. You have been watching Profondo Rosso or Deep Red or anything. And then we have played with the classic Goblin theme, which for me, big deal. That score was a big deal for me. That theme was one of the things that fueled my imagination of horror movie scores and what led
this
to
particular theme.
Yeah. And then which eventually led to me writing a book about horror film music was two very specific things: John Carpenter and his music, and then Goblin's music, which was originally that score is what turned me on to Goblin's music.
And then we can get into when your book is finally released, we can get into proper about the nuances in that, but that led you to write this book. So we talked about the alternate versions already. But this movie comes out and it is revered. Everyone loves it. I mean, it's hilarious. This old crotchety New York Times reporter from the day, he calls it a bucket of axe murder movie cliches, and he calls Argento himself a director of incomparable incompetence. But then everybody else actually praises it, and they say, this is a transitional work that shows him going, like we said, from the whodunits to the supernatural horror, and it really is regarded, we've said, as like people influences either musically, thematically, the themes, the horror movies. And
it's really, he was already a pretty big star, but this movie Argento was already a pretty big star with his first three movies, but this really put him over top. This movie, and most people regard this as his best movie.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. This is basically all his ideas that he kind of plays with before and after. He is able to best clarity. He's able to put him on the table for an audience.
I think here in America, Suspiria in the late 90s, Suspiria started popping up on lists of like the 100 greatest movies of all time.
Yeah, he had a huge resurgence.
Horror movies of all time, and because of the style and the paranormal aspect of it, it became the go-to Italian horror movie to put on like the best horror movies of all time list. So I think within the last 20 years, Suspiria has probably gained popularity here in America as being like the quintessential Argento movie, but really Profondo Rosso is like the quintessential Argento movie.
Yeah, and it should be regarded that way.
And it is, I mean, for me, Argento is such a big thing for me that I like most of his movies. I love most of his movies more than even a lot of people would give credit to. I mean, in recent years, there have been movies that aren't that great, but so for me, it's because he's one of my favorite directors. It's always like I can't pick a favorite, but Deep Red is definitely. There are days where Deep Red is my favorite.
Well, it's a shining.
It's definitely in my top, 3 or so.
It's a shining example to show somebody who's never seen an Argento movie, maybe to give this to him as an example, or a lot of his earlier stuff.
It really is kind of the quintessential because it's that period of like coming off of the Animal trilogy and then going into the rest of his career. It's upping the gore factor. It's kind of like that perfect bridge between early Argento and then like going into like that mid period of Argento, which is fascinating in terms of things that he starts doing. Always be known for his camera work. Here, it's like not as stylized as some of the other movies in terms of like production design and things that he does, but constant camera movement is
it's a staple of his almost.
Yeah, and it's beautifully done, better than you would expect.
Yeah,
given the time period, the amount of like dolly tracks they had to put down. I mean, this is pre-Steadicam. This is like pre-perfection of the Steadicam.
Yeah, so it's amazing.
So
the mobility.
What he's doing is really amazing, and even the stuff that is handheld is like you would think was Steadicam. I mean, some of the stuff where it's clearly they can't be a dolly inside the apartments and stuff. Sometimes it's really. I mean, the guy Luigi Cavaller, Kuveiller really needs recognition for his job as DP on this, because it's beautifully shot. I mean, everybody's with the obsession of Steadicam and that's what creates energy. Like, you can have camera movement that isn't shitty looking, like that creates energy, creates momentum, and everything.
Look at Orson Welles at the beginning of Touch of Evil, like that whole sequence. You can use it if it's used right. It's
this is a perfect example of like shaky handheld bullshit camera work is not needed to create energy. That this, like, you can move a camera with smoothness, and it's exciting, and it doesn't necessarily get in the way of things, and
it propels the story.
It's really a beautifully shot movie.
I guess the other thing we forgot to say is that his first draft of the script was 500 pages. And then then after his father and brother were like, "Hey, you got to cut this down a little bit,"
and they also didn't really understand what he was going for a lot of it. But luckily, they trusted him.
This came out of, like we said, of course, UK didn't even get a UK release because of the strict laws in the UK. It was billed in Japan as Suspiria 2, even though Suspiria hadn't even been released yet, so I guess it didn't come out till a while later, because this is 75, Suspiria 77, and in 2010, oddly, there was planned a little remake about
Romero, right?
Yeah, George Romero comes, Claudio Argento contacts Romero and says, "Hey, do you want to redo a 3D remake of Deep Red?" And Romero's like, "Oh yeah, okay, I can do that." And then he contacts
Claudio says, Dario's on board.
Who's Claudio Argento? That's his brother.
That's his brother.
And then then Romero talks to Argento, and we never even talked about the relationship between Romero. We don't have time to the right after this movie, Argento goes on to help Romero. Dawn of the Dead. He's all over Dawn of the Dead. He brings Goblin in. He helps get the movie released internationally. So that's how they have a friendship. So Romero goes to talk to Dario, and I was like, "What are you talking about?
I never heard of that.
Fuck that. Go stop making. No, you're not making my movie."
Other. We talked about the dogs being a bit of an homage to Exorcist. There's a scene where the killer's eye is inside darkness in the wardrobe. That's a little homage to the Spiral Staircase.
Yeah.
The opening scene with the, which we talked a lot about, with the psychic recognizing somebody evil through psychic power, is a bit of an homage to The Night Has 1,000 Eyes with Edward G. Robinson, who kind of sees a murder before it happens.
Yeah, and The Night of 1,000 Eyes is a great jazz song as well.
And there's one of the murders, the woman kind of attempts to ID the killer in like a frosted over mirror with steam.
Yes.
And that's a little homage to The Lady Vanishes. So a couple of, Argento he's a student of cinema.
Yeah, I think
he was a film critic, a lover of cinema. So
he's seen a lot of it.
He's not
like
working,
Truffaut did that. Yeah,
he's not working within a bubble here. I mean,
and that was the nice little cliffhanger when the author gets killed. She says the killer. She writes it out in steam on her tile, but then when the steam goes away, you don't see it.
Yeah.
And they just said she was pointing oddly to the thing, and then it's a great reveal as well.
And the other important thing for Argento, which is definitely an Argentoism, is that there is truth in art.
Yeah.
And this happens a lot in Suspiria. The flowers on the wall, one of them's a thing. In this movie, it's the kids' drawings, it's the paintings and the mirror. Stendhal Syndrome is an entire movie about art. So that was the last Argentoism that I didn't get mentioned. But yeah, art, big thing in Argento movies, and his protagonists are often, almost always, artists.
Yeah.
Here,
tortured souls.
Here, he's a musician, and I think it's a photographer in Bird with Crystal Plumage. Often, it's the artist that is that reluctant protagonist
who's in a strange land, who has to
figure stuff
out. Buckets of pizza rating.
5
out of 5. 6 out of 5. 6 out of 5. Me. Sleepover stars, I would give probably 4 out of 5.
I mean, Argento is literally one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. So. And
we can see this here.
And this is him at his best. So, I mean, I have to.
And if you haven't seen Profondo Rosso and you're a horror fan, go see it. We've ruined it for you now if you've stayed this long.
As a recommendation, personally, I'd say Tenebrae is a good follow-up. I personally love Tenebrae. It's early 80s, more of an 80s dance score, but done by 3 guys from Goblin. It's a very... the plot line is very similar to Basic Instinct in a way. It's about an author and there's murders taking place and they suspect the author. Some great, amazing set pieces. Beautiful thing. That would be my recommendation as another movie to watch.
Yeah, I haven't even thought.
Sleepover.
I would think my recommendation would probably be one of his original The Animals.
I know you're a big fan of Grew Up Burned with Crystal Blue,
Yeah,
which is probably.
Oh, even all three of those are great.
Yeah.
For their own reasons. So if you haven't seen any of the Animal trilogies, just because they put stuff on the map and he's doing a lot of good stuff. All these. I'm a big fan of his up until probably Stendhal Syndrome, and then for me he kind of falls off.
Yeah, I'm a big. I think he makes a great comeback with Sleepless, or in Italian, Non Ho Sono.
Yeah,
where he brings Goblin back from. They broke up. He brings Goblin back in 2000 to score, and he returns to the giallo.
Yeah,
and does this Sleepless, which is a really underrated movie. Because a lot of people wrote him off by then, but that's actually a really great movie.
Because he did a movie called Giallo itself with what's his face?
Adrian Brody.
Adrian Brody from 2015 or 14.
I argued that some of his movies that get trashed on, if he had not done them, if they didn't have the Argento name, people would be
praising them.
They would be praising them.
Yeah,
they are certainly in his catalog not that is strong, but there's a couple of movies there that people kind of trash of his that are not that had somebody else done it, people would not be nearly as hard on them.
Critical as them. I think anything up, in the 80s, all that stuff he does, like is it Phenomenon with Jennifer Connelly and
it was just fucking
Jack,
kooky.
not Jack
Donald
Palance,
Pleasance.
Donald Pleasance, and then what's the Carl Malden film?
That's Cat of Nine Tails.
Cat of Nine Tails. So I just go check out Dario Argento.
Sleepless Non Ho Sono has Max von Sydow's in it, and that actually has a lot of ties to. There's other actors that are in Deep Red are in it, and it's shot in Turin, so it's got and Goblin comes back to do the soundtrack, so it's very much kind of like has a lot of ties to Deep Red.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing we can stress is don't start with his recent stuff. Go back to like the 70s, 80s stuff, even 90s.
I feel bad for people that
solve Dracula.
I went to go see like Mother of Tears in the theater here in the city, so it got a theatrical release. I feel bad if that, and I like that movie just fine, but I feel bad for the people that's his first exposure. That's their first experience with Argento.
Well, thank you very much for listening. We hope you had a good time. We have a lot of great things going on this summer. Please check out our Facebook page. Check out Blake's Score to Death Facebook page. Yeah. His book's going to be dropping very soon this summer, and he's going to keep you updated.
It's on
about
pre-order
stuff.
on Amazon right now. Scored to Death.
We're on Twitter at Sat Sleepovers. Scored to Death is also on Twitter.
It's on Twitter and Facebook.
We're on Facebook. Check out our homepage. Our Saturday Night Movie Sleepovers homepage, because we have a lot of extra stuff usually with our
a lot
posters.
of great extras on the last podcast on that site for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles double feature.
Yeah.
We have a lot of good links to things.
Great. I was just talking to Blake before the podcast about how awesome I think a lyricist our partners in crime are for that Turtle Power song. I mean, it's amazing. If they wrote that thing themselves, they are wordsmiths.
We talked a lot about a documentary in that, and we have a link to that documentary.
Yeah, for the full documentary, and we had a link to the whole tour, the out of print. This is all Turtles. So the point being is we give you a lot of extras on our homepage. So go check that out and check those stuff out, and leave us a comment. You can talk to us on Facebook, you can talk to us on Twitter, and you can even leave comments themselves on our homepage. It's really nice to hear from people. And thank you very much for listening. We're going to be here in 2 weeks. We're going to have a great little tribute to 4th of July, and we hope you're going to like it. It's going to be a fun movie.
You have been listening to
Saturday Night Movie Sleepovers.
Later.